Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. Volume 1 was really quite short. This sentence deserves its own line. When I was working out the plot, I kept thinking how there's a whole system built around the result of consuming it. If that only ever applies to side characters and never to the protagonist, the entire setup gets completely inverted. All the world's setting would be pointless. Hence, from the very beginning, I confirmed that the protagonist had to consume something. And that in turn, this meant his early advancement would be a single leap to success, a quantum leap rather than a climb. The conventional satisfaction of a progressive power-up would have to wait for the second half. The beginning would instead build its own satisfying moments around that quantum leap premise. I've written similar stuff before, but not often. For me, it counts as fairly fresh ground and shouldn't trigger aesthetic fatigue. With that idea in place, Volume 1 was never going to be long. If I dragged it out to 100-odd chapters or more, with Ding Songyun still an ordinary man that happened to be a bit clever, decent with people, but otherwise useless, the reading experience would have been something close to a disaster. Of course, it's not impossible to write it that way. You'd need some external force to keep the power level suppressed so the protagonist can actually do things and feel involved, rather than being completely pushed around and controlled. That only serves to make readers anxious. After weighing it up, I settled on something around 200,000 to 300,000 characters for Volume 1. That's roughly the length of a mid-length novel, and just enough for a single complete saga. Once actual writing started, I made further adjustments based on my writing vibes and on reader feedback. For example, once sharp-eyed readers started spotting certain anomalies early on during the family of 5 daily life scenes, I cut a significant portion of those scenes, because too many abnormal details would have blunted the impact of the reveal. I kept mainly the scenes with the younger sister, since that's the centerpiece. Bull got streamlined but is largely still there. The parents' sections were trimmed considerably, though the key character-building moments remained. Some characters who were originally going to have more involvement in Volume 1, such as the Wushu, are going to be bumped to Volume 2. The goal was to keep Volume 1 focused on one incident, and not have Ding Songyun developing more and more side plots despite having ordinary human strength. That would drag the story's pace and make readers wonder when he is going to start training. Why is he still not starting to train? Not training right away was the whole point. When he does train, he trains big. That means the stages that show up in most martial cultivation stories, body tempering, chi cultivation, aperture refinement, can be covered relatively quickly later on, leaving room to focus on aperture forging, which may or may not be unique to this book, but is at least something a bit fresh. After all the adjustments, Volume 1 came down from the 80-odd chapters I'd originally estimated to 60. The story feels reasonably complete, and the main characters, personalities, and images have been established. In terms of what Volume 1 covers, I deliberately brought in some of the cultivation methods I find interesting, including some that feel decidedly un-wuxia, like the Sutra of Celestial Heart Wisdom, and the useless divine art, which I find genuinely interesting. This way, readers come away with an early sense that this is absolutely not a conventional mid-tier or low-tier martial arts setting, so they won't carry that expectation into what follows. This is fundamentally a mythological world, one with all manner of great powerhouses in it. It's only because of the heaven and earth severance that those divine arts and techniques gradually declined, producing the current era. It's tilted toward wuxia, with a relatively modest power ceiling. Under those conditions, what once were divine arts didn't disappear but were merely diminished. Some survive in the form of sorcery, others are absorbed into various martial disciplines. As a result, things are possible here that wouldn't be in conventional wuxia, or even in many mid-tier or low-tier xuanhuan settings. I know that this differs from the wuxia that readers picture in their heads. But if I only wrote the kind of wuxia that already lives in people's heads, I'd just be regressing to the pre-web novel era. A genre stays alive by constantly renewing itself. Innovation isn't guaranteed to land, but stagnation is guaranteed death. If Volume 1 has at least given readers a rough picture of the world I have in mind, I think part of what I set out to do has been accomplished. As a xuanhuan novel with a wuxia inclination, there will of course be a female lead. I can't say who it is yet. When character profiles are updated later, they'll all be listed as supporting female characters for now. Once things are finalized, I'll revise. Besides Xiao Qing, the Demoness, Dog Bro, Master, Zheng Zhuxi, Su Chang'an, and Qi Xiaoxiang, who are all definite additions, are there any other characters you'd like to see? It's been 10 years since I wrote anything in this Eastern vein. The feel for the language, word choices, prose style, all of it is still slowly being recalibrated. That can't happen overnight. It'll have to be chapter by chapter. I ask for your patience. Volume 1 doesn't have much fighting in it. My general habit is that if the protagonist isn't directly involved, fight scenes get kept to a minimum. No need to spend too much ink on it as long as it's just enough for the point to register. Otherwise, imagine the protagonist in the middle of something critical, while 2 or 3 chapters detail a side character fighting to the death. Just thinking about it is terrifying. And as an ordinary person, Ding Songyan could really only fight Yan Changqing, who had already stripped to almost nothing, under the cover of someone else suppressing the celestial heart imprint, using Yan Changqing's own qi, and only then because a secondary hidden thread was in play. Making him fight more often would strain the reasonability past its breaking point. This does mean some of the side characters' arcs end up feeling a little rushed. Now that Ding Songyan has jumped straight to the Grandmaster realm, things should improve considerably from here. After all, he has more fighting strength, more capacity to be involved, and the availability of plenty of threads that can be woven together, with nothing to hold him back. Volume 1 doesn't lay out nearly as many long-running hidden threads as Lord of Mysteries or Circle of Inevitability. Just 2. That's partly intentional. For this book, I wanted to try a different approach. Keep the front and middle sections light, satisfying, and full of swift justice, without making things overly complicated. The transmigration, Kunlun, and the mastermind pulling strings from the shadows will all be resolved and explained in time. Filling in foreshadowed gaps is something I'm reasonably good at. Within this volume, I managed to bring Xiao Qing, Dog Bro, and the Demoness to life, and I'm quite pleased with how they turned out. As for if life were always as it was at first sight, beyond the Demoness and the Ding family, there are others too, but that's a saying that needs time to settle. It won't have shown all it has to show in a single volume. I've mentioned Volume 2's title before. When kindred souls chance to meet, I drink to you. Its epigraph is all banquets under heaven must come to an end. One is gathering, the other is parting. The theme is the swift joys and sudden sorrows of the Jianghu, and the meetings and partings in life. Under the broad canopy of wuxia, that's actually relatively easy to write, so Volume 2 is built from a series of smaller events rather than one large, explosive main thread incident. Of course, there will be one on the surface, and the hidden threads will remain, flowing quietly, waiting for later. As is customary, 3.5 days off to organize Volume 2's outline and get a firm grip on the tone I'm after. Updates resume at 12:30 p.m. on July 1st, going premium on July 2nd. There will certainly be bonus chapters then, since I do have some stockpiled. Thank you, everyone. All banquets under heaven must come to an end. When everything had finally settled, the part of Ding Songyan's consciousness that had been pulled free to look down upon his own body returned to its mortal coil. It was enveloped by the dim, indistinct chaos that shrouded his face. His spirit naturally spread outward, but drawn back by the pull of his own chaos, it stopped at a distance of 50 feet, a range that was clearly smaller than it ought to be. Beyond that limit, he could only rely on his eyes to see, his ears to hear, and his nose to smell. This was the weakness that the chaos characteristic brought. Yet within 50 feet, working in concert with his exterior apertures, Ding Songyan's grasp of the environment, his ability to influence and alter it, and even his power to make the intangible real. All of it approached the state he had once reached by leveraging the power of heaven and earth through the celestial heart. It should surpass the vast majority of Dharma Realm Grandmasters. Setting aside the urge to explore further, Ding Songyan first turned his attention inward to examine his current condition. He sent his spirit through the ancestral aperture, settled his awareness in the Danshan, let his qi flow through his entire body, and gradually arrived at a series of imprecise but tangible assessments. This should count as the perfected Dharma realm. But just as I suspected, these chaos remains were clearly insufficient. In as soon as 3 years to as late as 5, my strength will fade, and my realm along with it. I must complete the corresponding martial path before then to consolidate my realm and power, making them truly mine. That demoness's portion is certainly enough. It may even be a little excessive. Though a little excess makes no real difference, I still hope it gives her trouble, something that keeps her from coming after me for the next 3 to 5 years. My body has been strengthened and transformed by chaos. All the apertures that belong to the human constitution have successfully crystallized. These are concrete, lasting changes. They would remain even if my strength were to fade right now. I will still maintain the perfected human realm. What is impermanent is the non-human apertures, the aberrant meridians, the non-human organs, and the exterior apertures, all forcibly condensed by the power of chaos. If I cannot work out a method of cultivation to stabilize them, they will gradually dissipate in 3 to 5 years. Looking at it this way, even if acupoint sealing techniques exist in this world, they cannot be particularly powerful. After all, from the Great Proliferation realm onward, different martial lineages produce warriors with different apertures and meridians. Sealing the same human acupoint would therefore produce different effects on different people. And indeed, as I wondered before, what happens when the relevant aperture lies outside the body? Naturally, the answer involves the condensation of apertures in the void. The dividing line between the Dharma realm and the Great Proliferation realm is precisely being able to roam the space around oneself with one's spirit, sensing heaven and earth, locating a point in the void intimately bound to oneself, and completing an act of aperture forging. It truly is a transformation of a fundamental nature. My apertures in the void have formed 4 legs, 4 wings, and a stretch of darkness. The 4 legs, combined with my original 2, correspond to up, down, and the 4 cardinal directions, the 6 directions. They are the embodiment of establishing the 6 directions, touching on the power of space, a part of space-time. The 4 wings correspond to spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the 4 seasons. They manifest the power of time, the other part of space-time. It's the embodiment of dividing the 4 seasons. That expanse of darkness and the chaos on my face correspond to bringing all things into unity. The former limits the range of my exterior void and spirit sensing. I cannot be like Master, who's capable of producing a stellar sky spanning 200 to 300 feet. As for manifesting the way and its virtue and banishing demons and warding off evil, I still cannot tell how they will manifest. I have gained 1 yellow sac organ and 2 more sets of non-human viscera, 1 set containing 2, the other containing 3. Does this represent? The way gives birth to 1, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3. The chi flowing through my meridians is dim and indistinct, bearing the characteristics of chaos. It seems this world's martial arts do speak of true chi after all. As for my true chi, I'll give it a name once I understand what it actually does. True chi resides in the central danshan, the Crimson Palace. Spirit and intention reside in the upper danshan, the ancestral aperture, also called the mystical pass or Nuan Palace. The lower danshan is the seat of primordial essence. It stores essence and gathers origin. What is gained daily through eating, breathing, and circulating chi through cultivation is stored in the lower danshan. Primordial essence spontaneously generates true chi, which flows to the Crimson Palace. For a normal martial artist, if true chi is fully spent, one can consume primordial essence as a temporary substitute. If too much primordial essence is consumed, it could damage one's lifespan. A damage one cannot reverse by oneself, requiring external means or a breakthrough in realm. I differ from normal martial artists for now. When my true chi is spent, and I need to replenish it quickly instead of recovering through sitting meditation, rest, or similar means, I will consume Chaos Force instead. Each portion of Chaos Force consumed will shorten the number of years I can maintain this perfected Dharma realm by some amount. With a flicker of intent, Ding Songyan made the exposed extra legs and resplendent wings vanish in an instant. They had been hidden away in the void. Ding Songyan stepped out of the west wing, fetched the bronze mirror from the main room, and carefully studied his current appearance. His face was dim and indistinct, as though veiled by a layer of black gauze. The skin of his neck was visibly yellowish, as though wax had been applied as an anti-frost measure. Other than these 2 points, everything else was considered normal. I was a little optimistic earlier. I thought that if I ate the chaos remains, the physical changes it brought would be no great matter, that I could conceal them like Brother Yaoyang does. But it seems this is something that can't be hidden from others. Conceal. Conceal. Ding Songyan suddenly found himself envying the demoness's divine art of heaven and earth transmutation. That art could bring about transformations, masking outward abnormalities, in ways that were difficult to see through unless one was a grandmaster facing them directly or possessed a special technique. At the thought of this, Ding Songyan remembered that there was still a thread of Yan Chanking's qi within his sea of consciousness. With Yan Chanking's soul obliterated by the nether lightning, this qi had become an object without a master, and it had been derived from the celestial heart imprint. Ding Songyan quickly settled his awareness in the ancestral aperture, fixed his spirit on the Nuan Palace, and for the first time used his own power to examine his sea of consciousness. This vast, endless, undulating phantom ocean should have been blazing with golden light. But now it was entirely swallowed by darkness. Not a single wave could be seen. The thoughts in my sea of consciousness have been hidden within chaos. That means, unless I encounter a technique that counters this, or someone overwhelms me with sheer realm domination, no one will ever be able to read my mind or ransack my soul. Ding Songyan was struck by a surge of delight. He could still genuinely run through thoughts right now, unimpeded by the chaos. It was simply that none of those thoughts leaked beyond the darkness unless he himself permitted it. At this moment, upon that deep and dark sea, beneath the shrouding mist of the high sky above, the hazy seed still remained. Ding Songyan already knew why. If he roused the darkness blanketing his sea of consciousness, he could effortlessly dissolve what remained of Yan Chanking's qi, letting this external object return to chaos, its celestial heart properties never to manifest again. But then, he quickly recalled what Yan Chanking had told Jai Hani, that the special nature of chaos could accommodate the Sutra of Celestial Heart Wisdom. Accommodate, a manifestation of manifesting the way and its virtue. Ding Songyan drew out a thread of dark true qi with keen interest, letting it curl upward like wisps of smoke, and brought it close to the phantom's seed. That thread of qi sank noiselessly into the hazy seed. In an instant, before Ding Songyan's eyes, a strange vision materialized. It resembled a honeycomb, yet considerably simpler than one. This honeycomb was composed of the hazy qi, which interwove into multiple strange imprints, cloud patterns, thunder patterns, all manner of forms, like different chambers. Ding Songyan tried infusing the vision with his own intention, specifically the will of piercing illusion. The thread of dark true qi immediately began to move through several chambers, then swiftly slipped back out of the hazy seed and traveled to Ding Songyan's eyes. Ding Songyan's sight became extraordinarily clear in an instant. He had once again acquired the ability to pierce illusions. He finally understood what manifesting the way and its virtue meant. The way is innate, virtue is acquired. The two joined as one implies proliferating heaven and earth, proliferating all things and all dharma. Truly worthy of the remains of the most ancient celestial theurge, Ding Songyan could not help but marvel inwardly. Though he had never read the Sutra of Celestial Heart Wisdom, and could not fundamentally proliferate its abilities and techniques from first principles, so long as that thread of Yan Chanking's qi remained, he could use the hazy seed to let his own qi proliferate and manifest corresponding transformations, achieving the same results, only 2 or 3 notches weaker. And this would not consume Yan Chanking's qi. It served merely as the template to be copied. Ding Songyan's eyes lit up with his characteristic love of experimentation. He tried again and again, discovering that dark true qi, once transformed through the hazy seed, could indeed accomplish illusion piercing, body protection, leaping, the sensing of heaven and earth, and the activation of his yin eyes. What it could not do was inject the celestial heart into the hearts of men, or transmit qi to others through a celestial heart imprint. A celestial heart imprint is indeed the act of pouring one's thoughts and thinking into a target through the celestial heart to influence them, not a matter of reading minds or memories. No wonder my thoughts were still my own every time I simply contemplated doing something. Only when I actually intended to act would I be affected. There's also the idea of don't think about certain things. Looking at it this way, for a celestial heart imprint to function at its best, The practitioner would either need to be close to the target and observe conditions at all times, or have a very deep understanding of the target. Following this line of thought, Ding Songyin realized there was one more thing he had not yet tried. He once again drew a thread of dark true qi into the hazy seed, this time carrying with it the thought of concealing changes. When it emerged from the hazy seed, that thread of qi had already proliferated into the same hue. As it circulated through his entire body, Ding Songyin watched in the bronze mirror as his complexion swiftly returned to normal, his face once again becoming distinct and clear. It actually works. Master Yan truly was a good man. This qi is incredibly useful. My manifesting the way and its virtue is even more useful. For a moment, Ding Songyin was brimming with self-satisfaction. Both his body and mind relaxed considerably. From the day of his transmigration to this day, he finally had some sense of my body is truly mine. Changing out of his soiled clothes, Ding Songyin put on the moon-colored lined robe he had originally worn. Bang, 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 someone was knocking at the courtyard door. Since the distance between them was no more than 50 feet, the image of Su Chang'an naturally surfaced in Ding Songyin's mind. Why is he here again? Ding Songyin strode over, lifted the bolt, and opened the door. Is something wrong? It's just that girl who listens to your storytelling every day, that heavenly beauty. She asked me to give you a letter. Su Chang'an looked at Ding Songyin the way one looked at an immortal. Bright Night sect, as Zheng Zhuxi had come to find him. And the heavenly beauty outside Dangkang Temple had written him a letter. And his own younger sister is equally a rare beauty in this world, Miss Xiao Qing. Ding Songyin quickly took the letter, unfolded it, and read. Ding Songyin, my second uncle says we must set out at once. I have no way to bid you farewell in person, and so I left this note. I have asked that familiar gentleman who comes with you to Dangkang Temple to pass it along. May fate bring us together again in the Jianghu someday. Su Qingli. Miss Xiao Qing has left just like that. Ding Songyin gazed at Su Chang'an, somewhat wistful, and asked casually, when did she give you the letter? In Ding Songyin's heart, Miss Xiao Qing and Ren Yaoyang were currently better friends than even Su Chang'an or Zheng Zhuxi. One might even say theirs was a bond forged through mortal peril. After all, brother Yaoyang had truly given up one life. Su Chang'an replied with an expression full of envy, about the time to drink 2 cups of tea ago. She knocked on my door, borrowed paper and a brush to leave this letter, and said she was heading straight for the East City docks. You were clearly home. Why didn't she come find you directly? 2 cups of tea ago. That would have been not long after I swallowed the chaos remains. Miss Xiao Qing made it all the way to Chengyu Lane. Why did she not come see me? Ding Songyin suddenly thought of the words banishing demons and warding off evil. While he was mulling this over, another figure came walking down Chengyu Lane. It was Ren Yaoyang, canine ears pricked upright, his phantom green snake earrings coiling about him. Ren Yaoyang carried himself with a blended air of divine authority and a hint of something sinister. Beneath his feathered robes, his body seemed to show signs of partial beastward transformation. He was carrying 2 small jugs of wine bound with hemp rope. He had just reached the entrance to the Ding family's courtyard when he suddenly narrowed his eyes, as if wanting to raise his right palm and shade himself from the blazing sun. Brother Yaoyang, what brings you here? Ding Songyin asked with a smile. Su Chang'an looked at Ren Yaoyang, who had physical abnormalities, radiating the presence of a true master, then looked back at Ding Songyin, utterly baffled. Is this really the brother Ding I know? Since when did he have such an extensive circle of acquaintances? First Bright Night sect, as Zheng Zhuxi, then that heavenly beauty, and now this kind of powerhouse too. Ren Yaoyang gave Ding Songyin a long, deep look, then smiled and held up the 2 dark brown jugs. I head back to Dan Province tomorrow. I came to share a drink with you. The True Spirit sect was located in Dan Province, in the southeast of the Great Zhao dynasty. Ding Songyin's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. He let out a laugh. Then let's find a better spot for it. The East City docks had returned to their usual bustle. The Tianyang Trading Company's tower boat was weighing anchor and setting off. Su Qingxiao made his way to the cabin at the base of the uppermost deck and knocked on the half-open wooden door. Come in! Su Qingli's muffled, discontented voice drifted out. Su Qingxiao pushed the door open. Amid the fragrant scent filling the room, he looked toward his young niece sitting by the window, glum and downcast. Didn't you go to bid farewell to Ding Songyin? Why the face? Su Qingli, now changed into a plain white dress, pure and fresh, glanced up at her second uncle. It's just a bit of melancholy. Her eyes shifted, and feigning nonchalance, she asked, "Second uncle, say someone's nature naturally counters yours. How would you even approach them?" Su Chengxiao's brow moved slightly. He sized up Su Qingli carefully. Only when the girl was beginning to shift under his gaze did he clasp his hands behind his back and say, "Either they reach the Heaven Man realm and become a supreme master, at which point all traits can be extended or withdrawn at will, or you cultivate to at least one minor realm above them. Even then, you'd only manage a few exchanges at worst. If you're a full major realm above, you can significantly minimize the countering effect." "What about the same minor realm?" Su Qingli pressed. Su Chengxiao suddenly smiled. "You'd have enough presence of mind to curse them out a few times while they're countering you. So I still can't approach them normally." Su Qingli lowered her head and looked down at her own feet. Just then, a shout came drifting from far away. "Miss Zio Ching! Eh!" Su Qingli immediately pushed the window open, leaned out her upper body, and looked toward the source of the voice. She saw Ding Songyan, in his moon-white-lined robe with his hair simply gathered, holding a small jug of wine. He was standing at the corner of the eastern city wall closest to the river, with the feather-robed, tall-crowned Ren Yaoyang beside him. "I'm here!" Su Qingli's face immediately beamed with a bright smile. She stretched out her arm and waved it gently. From his place at the corner of the wall, Ding Songyan saw that Miss Zio Ching had not yet gone far. He let out a great laugh, raised the jug of wine, and called out, "For a friend departing for home, how could I not come to see her off?" Su Qingli's eyes lit up. She spun around and called to her maidservant Yuyao, "Fetch me a jug of wine." Yuyao hesitated, her gaze drifting toward Su Chengxiao. Su Chengxiao sighed. "Bring her a small jug of rice wine." "Okay." Yuyao turned and ran out of the room. "Quickly, quickly," Su Qingli urged. At the same time, she climbed out the window, and using the gaps in the planking and the various protrusions along the cabin exterior, ascended with fluid, graceful ease. Within 5 or 6 breaths, she was at the very top of the tower boat. "Wait for me!" Su Qingli cupped her hands around her mouth and called back toward the city wall. A gust of wind swept across the river, leaving her white skirt billowing. She looked like a fairy of Gush Mountain coming down to earth. The tower boat moved slowly toward the center of the river. Seeing that Ding Songyan and Ren Yaoyang had already sat down cross-legged, Su Qingli followed their lead. She straightened her skirt and settled onto the deck with easy, unstudied grace. She gazed out at the river, rolling and vast, its far bank barely visible, and felt suddenly as though her own chest had opened wide. A moment later, Su Chengxiao tossed the small jug of rice wine that Yuyao had fetched straight up. It landed squarely in front of Su Qingli. The girl broke the clay seal and lifted the jug. Ding Songyan, seeing this, thought to recite some verse, but it had been so many years since graduation, and most of what he had memorized was long forgotten. He could only recall a complete version of the 10 or 20 most famous pieces. For anything else, dredging up a single line was a triumph. Unable to find anything suitable, he simply improvised, throwing out his own botched version without any concern for parallelism, tonal pattern, or rhyme. Miss Zio Ching, grand ambitions, shared in laughter and talk. No joy surpasses drinking to the dregs with a kindred soul. With that, he raised the small jug of fine wine and took a large swig. Carried on the river wind, the words reached Su Qingli's ears, and she shouted back, "Well said." She raised her rice wine and poured it into her mouth, tasting something sweet and gently spiced, soft but not sharp. Ding Songyan glanced at Ren Yaoyang, who was sitting beside him in a daze. "Brother Yaoyang, are you not drinking?" Ren Yaoyang swept a glance at the soldiers patrolling the city wall, the Bright Knight sect disciples and Yamen constables below, and the crowd at the distant docks. He let out a sigh, raised his own jug, and tipped his head back to drink. After wiping his mouth, Ding Songyan called out again with a laugh, "Are we the kind to waste our days in weeds and ditches? When the storm comes, we become dragons." "Well said. Are we the kind to waste our days in weeds and ditches?" Su Qingli raised her jug in reply and clinked it across the air toward Ding Songyan and Ren Yaoyang. All three threw their heads back and drank. Ding Songyan wiped his palm across his mouth, stood, raised his jug high, and called out with a laugh, "Miss Zio Ching, may we both live long and meet again another day." He had almost gone with "May we both live long and share this moonlight across 1,000 miles," but found it too suggestive, so he forced a change to the second half. "May we both live long and meet again another day." Su Qingli stood as well, calling back across the water. Ren Yaoyang said nothing at all and simply kept drinking. The tower boat had not yet reached midstream, but all three had already upended their jugs and shown them empty. 3 cups drained, and with that the parting was done. Su Kingli felt that this was exactly right for figures of the Jianghu. Why wallow further in sentiment? She waved once, took the empty jug, and leaped straight from the top of the boat, tapped lightly off the ledge of her open window, and spun back inside like a bird wheeling on the breeze. A faint flush lay across her face. She passed the empty jug to Yuyo, her eyes and the corners of her mouth all smiling, and said, "This is the Jianghu I had in my heart." As she spoke, her gaze sparkled and danced, as if 2 pools of fine wine were hidden within, so vivid that even the little maidservant Yuyo felt almost as if she herself had grown tipsy. At the bend in the city wall, Ding Songyan turned to look at Ren Yaoyang, half amused. "Brother Yaoyang, you didn't seem to be in the highest spirits just now." Ren Yaoyang swept a glance down at the base of the wall, then said, carefully, "Songyan, when you were shouting and drinking like that, every boatman, ferryman, porter, warehouse hand, guard, Bright Night sect disciple, county and prefectural constable, traveling merchant and passerby heard you and saw you. Aren't you afraid of being mocked behind your back or talked about? Oh, so you found it embarrassing, worried about losing face." Ding Songyan smiled, speaking with a slight warmth of wine. "So long as I'm not near Chengyu Lane or Dangkang Temple, fewer than 1 in 1,000 people in this city know who I am. What does it matter? If anything, it's you, brother Yaoyang. You are the one who's already famous throughout the Jianghu. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have gotten up on this wall in the first place. And now you're even more formidable than before. Truly, who in the world does not know you?" This was Ding Songyan's way of teasing Ren Yaoyang. "Nobody knows me, so you're the one who lost face, not me." Ren Yaoyang's expression froze. For a moment he could not think of a response. By now, Ding Songyan's dark true qi had circulated through his body several times, dispersing most of the wine's effects. This prompted him to reflect, with some appreciation, that Zhen Qianfen had quite likely been administering some rare poison to Yan Changqing every day. However, Yan Changqing's stomach had long since undergone a fundamental transformation, and Dijiang's remains were nearby. Whatever the poison, the moment it was consumed it would surely have been subsumed into the chaos, and the state Yan Changqing showed under the influence of his own internal transformation had led Zhen Qianfen to believe the poison was working. Hence, he had never suspected otherwise. I can't quite manage that yet. I should still be susceptible to drugs. But my true qi carries the quality of bringing all things into unity, and with strength at the perfected Dharma realm, a full circulation through the body would be enough to neutralize the great majority of any poison or drug's effect within a very short time. Ding Songyan took the opportunity to review his own condition. He smiled and clapped Ren Yaoyang on the shoulder. "We're out of wine. Come on, brother Yaoyang, my treat, drinks and company." Brother Yaoyang had my back earlier. I absolutely have to treat him. Ren Yaoyang's canine ears twitched. He sighed. "Sigh, I no longer have that kind of worldly desire." "Ah, so that's the price of becoming divine after death. No wonder brother Yaoyang spent every day before his death visiting pleasure quarters. He wasn't worried at all about wearing down his primordial essence." Ding Songyan asked, with genuine commiseration, "Then what do you still desire?" Ren Yaoyang gazed out at the great river rolling past and said, "The feelings of loyalty and affection have grown weaker, but they're still in my heart. The desire in that aspect hasn't entirely vanished either, only one must first have feeling. What's stronger is the principle I want to see enacted in my own conduct. And wine, blood offerings, well-prepared beef, lamb and pork, as well as chickens, ducks and geese are also things I crave. I can still find pleasure in watching plays and listening to storytelling, that sort of thing. That's not bad at all." Ding Songyan was genuinely glad on Yaoyang's behalf. Ren Yaoyang drew his gaze back and looked at him. His expression turned serious. "Songyan, did you consume something?" Ding Songyan did not answer at once. Ren Yaoyang touched the phantom green snake earring at his ear and said with a smile, "I became a ghost deity, a corpse deity. I have the nature of both ghost and corpse and can pass in and out of the netherworld. I'm half a sinister creature. How would I not sense that something about you is off? Just now it was entirely the divine aspect holding me in place, keeping me from instinctively backing 3 paces away." Author's note: for the 3 toasts Ding Songyan calls across the water, The first is adapted from James Wang's life. Jianghu. The second's first half comes from Li Bai's parting from my children at Nanling for the capital. The second half has no traceable source. The third borrows the opening of Su Shi's Mid-Autumn Moon before the closing line is made up. It shows how long Ding Songyan has been out in the world. His poetic sensibility has grown blunt. Seeing that Ren Yaoyang had already said as much, Ding Songyan stopped concealing it. He gave a light nod. Yes, I did. He held off on saying what it was for the moment. He was not yet sure what his master had told the True Spirit sect, or whether the Chaos remains had come up and he did not want to undercut his elders. Ren Yaoyang's canine ears gave a twitch. He did not press further. He flicked his right hand. No desire for drinks and company, but eating and drinking that I still want. Let's go find a restaurant. Ding Songyan rubbed his stomach. The image of cutting open Yan Changking surfaced in his mind in a baffling manner, and his appetite promptly vanished. Back then, he had been wound taut with tension, his spirit racing, so he had not felt nauseated at all. Now, he could barely stand it by merely recalling it. But Brother Yaoyang wanted to eat and drink. He would have to endure it even at the cost of his life. The two found a restaurant nearby in the east of the city and ordered 4 hot dishes: spicy pork and mutton trotters, braised pork offal, steamed goose and duck cuts, and 3 crisp broth, alongside 3 cold dishes of dressed lettuce, spiced braised beef, and shredded chicken skin with hemp paste, 2 sweets of carved candied fruit and red bean rice balls, and 2 jugs of lychee liquor. Once all the dishes had arrived, Ding Songyan raised a bowl of lychee liquor and said to Ren Yaoyang, "To find even one true friend in life is already a fortune. And yet I was able to meet both you and Miss Zio Ching in one go. That calls for 3 bowls." "Only 3 bowls," Ren Yaoyang gave an amused tut. "Am I not just worried you can't handle it, Brother Yaoyang?" Ding Songyan refused to yield the point. Ren Yaoyang gave a short chortle. "I'm a ghost deity, a corpse deity now. Mortal wine just lifts the mood a little. What could possibly get me drunk?" Ding Songyan was quiet for a moment, then said, "My true chi can dispel the effects of wine. I'm not afraid of getting drunk either." Ren Yaoyang fell quiet as well. After a few breaths, he raised his bowl. "Bottoms up!" Yams sang. Ding Songyan recalled the toast he had picked up back when he went to Guangzhou for investors and returned it with a grin. He gulped down the bowl of lychee liquor and refilled it. Then, with a casual glance around the room, he quietly raised one foot as if pressing against something in front of him, while planting the other firmly on the restaurant floor. At the same time, the 4 extra legs hidden in the void each extended upward, backward, left, and right. Without a sound, currents of qi converged. An invisible barrier seemed to settle over Ding Songyan and Ren Yaoyang, imperceptible to the naked eye. To the other diners in the restaurant, their table had simply gone very quiet, 2 men eating and drinking in silence, nothing more reaching the outside. "Brother Yaoyang, there is something I'd like to ask your opinion on." Ding Songyan ate a piece of spicy pork trotter to open his appetite and said, with a sincere expression. Ren Yaoyang picked up a piece of large intestine with his chopsticks and smiled. "What matter requires guarding against ears through the wall?" He too had noticed what Ding Songyan had done to the surroundings. "Brother Yaoyang, if someone consumed a divine creature and leaped straight to the heavens, would eating their remains produce something similar?" Though both of them understood perfectly well the context, Ding Songyan still did not say it in plain terms. Ren Yaoyang let out a laugh. It was possible in ancient times. After the heaven and earth severance, it became rarer and rarer, and in the last 2 or 3,000 years it no longer happens. "Why?" Ding Songyan inwardly let out a breath of relief and pressed out of curiosity. Ren Yaoyang held up a chopstick and made a gesture. "A matter of realm. Let me give you an example. Say in ancient times you consumed a magical beast at the mystic realm. You might have leaped straight to the Dharma realm, or even the Heaven Man realm. And if you then managed to break through to the mystic realm yourself, your remains would be equivalent to the flesh of that magical beast. If what you consumed was a divine creature, you would still need to make further breakthroughs, and it's not just one realm. And since the heaven and earth severance, no one has ever been able to step from the spirit platform realm into the mystic realm. Naturally, what you're describing can no longer occur." Ding Songyan nodded in thoughtful silence. "So the weakest divine creatures and magical beasts are at the mystic realm, and after the spirit platform realm comes the mystic realm." "That's right." Ren Yaoyang scooped a bowl of 3 crisp broth, made from 3 varieties of wild herb, and bent over it, blowing on the steam, while saying offhandedly, "Taken from mystical and more mystical, the gateway to all wonders. So after the mystic realm comes the myriad wonders realm. A pity we can only read about these realms in ancient texts now." Ding Songyan was satisfied and let the topic go. He picked up a slice of braised beef and remarked, making conversation, "They sell beef quite openly in this restaurant. Aren't oxen too valuable to slaughter?" Ren Yaoyang ate a spoonful of 3 crisp broth and looked up with a grin. "You still haven't recovered your memories. With the Grand Joy sect around, would Great Zhao ever go short of cattle? With the bumper harvests these past years, having oxen everywhere is part of the reason." The Grand Joy sect. Ding Songyan knew it was one of Great Zhao's 6 sects and 4 schools, traditionally spoken of in the same breath as the True Spirit sect, but he could not see what connection it had to whether oxen were scarce. Ren Yaoyang touched his own canine ear. The Grand Joy sect's lineage traces back to the corpse of Prince Zai. Prince Zai was the mortal god of animal husbandry, and so even though the Grand Joy sect is based in the south, their livestock business is the best in the world. When I was young, the Grand Joy sect was the sect I admired most. The corpse of Prince Zai. Ding Songyan racked his memory for the relevant passage in the secret classic of mountains and seas. After a moment it came to him. The corpse of Prince Zai. Both hands, both thighs, the chest, the head, the teeth, all severed and scattered in different places. The result of consuming it tames the 100 beasts, aids their propagation, kindles ardent desire, and the corpse sunders into divinity. Sunders into divinity. No wonder he's so often mentioned alongside the True Spirit sect. It's the same idea as becoming divine after death, just differently expressed. Kindles ardent desire. What on earth is that? A negative characteristic. Ding Songyan pondered, then in the spirit of intellectual inquiry, responded to what Ren Yaoyang had said. Why was the Grand Joy sect the one you admired most? Ren Yaoyang's expression came suddenly alive, his eyebrows nearly jumping off his face. Besides the precious scroll of the 100 beasts, they also have a secret text. It's called the Ode to the Grand Joy of Heaven and Earth's Yin-Yang Union. That is actually where the Grand Joy sect's name comes from. How every lecher under heaven has dreamed of entering the Grand Joy sect. A pity I'm already a ghost deity now. By the end of this, Ren Yaoyang's face was full of regret, his canine ears drooping slightly. That is a martial art built on the Kindle's ardent desire trait. It must also incorporate aids their propagation and sunders into divinity. Ding Songyan raised his bowl to console his friend. "Brother Yaoyang, one of your past days was worth more than an ordinary man's year. Bottoms up." Ren Yaoyang had made his peace with things. He raised his bowl and clinked it against Ding Songyan's. With wine warming their faces and talk flowing freely, Ren Yaoyang suddenly said, "That nominal elder brother of yours, Li Zhai, his body is at the Linjiang County Yamen. Would you like to go see it? So Bull is dead. His real name was Li Zhai." Ding Songyan was briefly dazed, then said, "Seeing him again would only be worse than not seeing him." Ren Yaoyang gave a slow nod. Li Zhai was a notorious bandit of New Yu, violent by nature. After death, he will certainly become a malevolent ghost, lingering in this world and causing harm. Our True Spirit sect has arts for commanding ghosts. It is one of our fundamental disciplines. If we could obtain this malevolent ghost, it would benefit quite a few of our disciples. What are your thoughts on this? Ding Songyan was quiet for a moment, then gave a wry smile. "The dead should be released from their debts. Let Bull return to the netherworld." "All right," Ren Yaoyang accepted without hesitation. "I'll go tonight and commit him earth to earth, dust to dust." "Thank you, Brother Yaoyang." Ding Songyan raised his bowl, moved beyond words. The matter brought Yan Chanking to mind. That supreme master had surely died full of deep resentment and willful attachment. Had he not been obliterated by the nether lightning, he would in all likelihood have become a malevolent ghost in time. Then Ding Songyan's thoughts turned to Chaos's quality of banishing demons and warding off evil, and he suspected that Yan Chanking, having consumed the stuff, might well have been incapable of becoming a malevolent ghost at all. The meal stretched on until the moon rose above the willow tips and lanterns of vivid red and gold hung throughout the city. Ren Yaoyang paid again, saying it was to celebrate Ding Songyan. The True Spirit sect disciple descended the stairs with a slight flush of wine and said to Ding Songyan as he went, "You may have leaped straight to the heavens, but the martial arts of the Bright Knight sect are not something you can do without. Before the heaven and earth severance, you would have been mighty and boundless, with no need for these ordinary methods. But in today's world, whether it is celestial theurge secret texts or mystic realm creature lineages, they all top out at the spirit platform realm, nothing to choose between them. Setting aside counter-elemental clashes, the refined techniques and secret methods born from all manner of special traits are what prove most useful in battle and in daily life. Do not neglect them. I intend to take it step by step. Ding Songyan's own thinking ran the same way. They stepped out of the restaurant onto the street. Feeling the warm river breeze, Ren Yaoyang turned to face Ding Songyan. Tomorrow when I leave for Dan province, you don't need to see me off. Why? Ding Songyan had been planning on making quite a spectacle of it. Ren Yaoyang sighed. 2 of my guards were lost in the Zhen estate affair. One of them practiced ghost commanding arts, and his malevolent ghost has to be brought back to the sect. If you come to see me off, the ghost has nowhere to run. It would likely dissipate entirely. Besides, among my other guards, some cultivate the way follows nature, and they're keenly attuned to changes in their surroundings. They might pick up on what is different about you, and you seem to want to keep that from wider knowledge. True spirit sect disciples gazed past over Ding Songyan's face, but asked nothing about what method he was using to conceal his physical changes. For now, yes. Ding Songyan answered honestly, then smiled. I can see you off from the city wall just as I did today. Ren Yaoyang's face went dark. There's absolutely no need for that. Only after saying it did he notice that Ding Songyan's face was full of teasing amusement. It was clearly a joke, with him having no intention of following through. Heth! Ren Yaoyang said nothing more, only raised a hand in farewell. Since you've already leaped straight to the heavens, I look forward to meeting you again in the Jianghu. For now, we part here. Without the slightest reluctance, he turned and walked off into the bright, bustling lanes, and owing to his unusual appearance and the phantom snakes at his ears, passers-by naturally parted to make way for him. Ding Songyan shook his head with a smile and set off toward Chengyu Lane. Along the way, he took in the night scenery for the first time with a truly relaxed body and mind. His gaze drifted over lanterns vivid and bright, over the street stalls displaying theatrical masks, performance props, and swords, over the young women, each lovely in her own season like spring orchids and autumn chrysanthemums. Amid all of this, the laughter and talk of passers-by filled his ears, a soft evening wind brushed his face, and for a moment everything felt dreamlike. Back at Chengyu Lane, Ding Songyan noticed that the neighbors chatting by the well were somewhat evasive toward him. Only some of them returned his greeting. News of what happened at the Zhen estate must have spread. Ding Songyan did not give it much thought and went inside, intending to look through the secret classic of mountains and seas and determine what the sage-severing ways lineage actually traced back to. With the clues of numerological arts, deceiving both self and others, and sensing heaven and earth to work from, he felt it would not be hard to narrow down the answer. The fact that he had been overlooking this all along was obviously the result of external interference. He had barely opened the wooden chest when his gaze came to a halt. Inside lay an extra thread-bound booklet. Ding Songyan picked it up in puzzlement and leafed through it. What met his eyes was a familiar hand, beautiful and delicate, and the text was a transcription of the detailed legend of the white snake that he had narrated outside Dangkang Temple and on several evenings before bed. Staring at the hand-copied legend of the white snake, Ding Songyan was quiet for a long while, then sighed inwardly. That demoness actually transcribed it when she said she would. What does a demoness of the sage-severing way need with keeping her word? Isn't deception the very core of what she cultivates? Behaving just like a stalker. While I was telling stories outside Dangkang Temple, you were probably lurking somewhere nearby listening the whole time. Ding Songyan flipped to the end and found that Jai Hanny had actually revised the 3 songs to a certain degree, adding playable zither notation and pipa tablature. Quite talented, I'll give her that. Feeling helpless and wistful, Ding Songyan set down the White Snake manuscript and dug out the secret classic of mountains and seas, which he had reburied in the stack of books. By the light of the oil lamp, he quickly found the passage he was after. Taowu, ignorance, tiger-bodied, canine-furred, human-faced, tiger-clawed with fangs and a tiger's tail 18 feet in length, ferocious and untamable. The result of consuming it, cultivates malice and proliferates evil, commands schemes and oversees deception, never retreats in battle, corresponding with heaven and earth, and foresees events to come. Corresponding with heaven and earth is the same as resonates with heaven and earth. And events to come means future events? Then, foresees events to come really does fit well with mastery of numerological arts. The demoness made me swear an oath and spared my life. Was it because she'd seen certain scenes of the future? Ding Songyin arrived at a new conjecture about what had happened before. What astonished him even more was the trait, commands, schemes, and overseas deception. Piercing illusions, concealing physical abnormalities, deceiving others, deceiving oneself, deceiving heaven and earth. All of these seem to be masterful applications of those four terms. Combined with corresponding with heaven and earth, it becomes imprint one's own heart upon the celestial heart, inject the celestial heart into the hearts of men. Exactly as Brother Yaoyang said, using a trait in its raw form is too simple and too blunt, not refined enough. Each of my traits has enormous potential to be excavated and developed. Once I've learned the fundamentals from the Bright Knight sect's martial arts, I can try to create a series of divine techniques rooted in my own traits. Is this what it means to forge one's own martial path, to found one's own school? At the thought of this, Ding Songyin was suddenly fired with excitement, and something close to ambition stirred in him. This is genuinely interesting. Ding Songyin had always been the kind of person who loved to tinker and research. Even after his startup succeeded, he had been mulling over whether to return to the ivory tower of academia and do the research he truly cared about. Now, with the opportunity to forge his own martial path and leave a name through the ages, how could he possibly contain himself? In this life, cut off from the internet and left to fend for himself, there had to be something to do beyond eating, drinking, and amusing himself. Ideally, it was something he was actually interested in. He calmed himself down and found the true spirit sex entry in the classic. Shebai's corpse, beast-bodied, human-faced, with canine ears, adorned with two green snakes. The result of consuming it: summons gods and commands ghosts, takes the way of nature as one's teacher, assists heaven and supports earth, and the soul is inextinguishable. Right, the useless divine art extends from the two traits, summons gods and commands ghosts, an inextinguishable soul. The more Ding Songyin learned, the more convinced he became that this secret classic of mountains and seas was worth a fortune. After reading carefully for a while, he put the book away, picked up Jaihani's handwritten white snake, found brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, went out of the west wing, and set them all on the square table. He trimmed the lamp wick, and once the light had brightened considerably, he sat down, took up the brush, and began to copy out the legend of the white snake. He had already promised to sell the story to the storytellers association so that his fellow colleagues could tell it too, and he intended to be as good as his word. But if he sold the demoness's handwritten copy, it would almost certainly bring a death sentence down on whoever ended up with it if she ever came across it. Ding Songyin had no wish to implicate an innocent party, so he had no choice but to go to the trouble himself. Good practice for his handwriting in any case. The moment the brush tip touched the paper, Ding Songyin noticed it felt different from before. It was as though he could see exactly where each stroke ought to fall, and knew precisely what spacing should be kept between each line. Combined with a Dharma Realm Grandmaster's control of force and fineness of touch, the characters that came out were naturally formed. It was not beautiful in any distinctive way, but every stroke was exactly as it should be. A fraction heavier and they looked bloated, a fraction lighter, skeletal, a hair to the left and they felt crowded, a hair to the right, overslanted, upright and balanced, neither leaning nor tilting. Ding Songyin finished a page, studied it carefully for a full 20 breaths, and offered himself this assessment. He had not expected that the act of writing also contained a way, and that his own manifesting the way and its virtue had already assimilated into his spirit intent. Beyond his deliberate exercises of it, it could be triggered passively as well, truly worthy of the most ancient celestial theurge. Ding Songyin lost count of how many times he had now praised the chaos remains. With this, his copying flew. He had estimated 4 hours for 2 complete chapters. In the end, he finished 5 full chapters, approaching half the manuscript. After the night watchman struck another hour, Ding Songyin left the table as it was, dropped the door bolt, and lay back on the bed. In the process of copying the white snake, he had also been waiting. He wanted to know whether his master would come to take him to meet a sage or supreme master. That would be another trial. It was now late at night, and nothing of the sort had occurred. Ding Songyan concluded it was unlikely to happen now and slept soundly. He woke up early, the sound of the night soil cart arriving outside, calling out to collect. He looked out at the empty courtyard and, feeling both relaxed and faintly wistful, took up the chamber pot and went out. Once he had cleaned himself up, he gathered half a scoop of coal, got the stove going, and set the wok to heat. Then he rummaged through the cupboard in the main room for an egg, cracked it neatly, and dropped it into a bowl. He added a pinch of fine salt, broke the yolk with his chopsticks, and beat it together with the white. By the time that was done, the wok was hot. Ding Songyan spooned in a small measure of lard, watched it melt quickly with a sizzle. Then, he poured in the beaten egg and worked it briskly with a spatula, breaking it into small pieces as a rich fragrance rose up. Ding Songyan drew a long breath, then, with unhurried contentment, added the leftover rice from yesterday's lunch into the pan and stir-fried it together with the broken egg. Just before taking it off the heat, he allowed himself the extravagance of scattering in a handful of spring onion, dotting the white and yellow with green. "Looks good!" Ding Songyan smiled at his own handiwork. He scooped out a bowl of egg-fried rice, found some pickled vegetables, and settled at the other side of the square table to eat with easy enjoyment. He was no great cook, but years of living on his own out in the world had given him no trouble with simple food. The egg, the rice, the onion, all of them richly fragrant, the flavors as vivid as something tangible, flooding his mouth. With the pickles adding their tantalizing sharpness, Ding Songyan ate with unusual satisfaction. "Brother Ding," Su Chang'an's figure appeared in the half-open courtyard doorway. "Have you eaten yet?" Ding Songyan asked with a smile. "Not yet, I'll just buy a steamed bun in a bit." Su Chang'an slipped into the courtyard. "There's still rice in the wok, help yourself." Ding Songyan gestured at the iron pot with his chin. Su Chang'an silently found a bowl, scooped himself some rice, and sat down beside Ding Songyan. Several times he opened his mouth as if to speak, but could not find the words. Ding Songyan sent the last grain of rice into his mouth and glanced at him, smiling. "You've seen the wanted notice." "Yeah." Su Chang'an's expression was that of a man still walking in a dream. How could little sister Qingyan be demoness Jai from the peerless beauties of the Jianghu? Her beauty capable of toppling kingdoms and cities, did you think one would just pop out from a crack in a rock? Ding Songyan paid no mind to the fact that he himself had failed to suspect anything. When it was time to educate Su Chang'an, he educated. "Indeed." Su Chang'an shot a sheepish glance at Ding Songyan. "Uncle Ding, no, Qiu Chen is dead too. His body was found on the riverbank several miles from here. So it really is only the demoness and my nominal mother who survived." The demoness's second nightmare corresponded to how all this would end. Ding Songyan was briefly dazed. Su Chang'an could not help asking, "Brother Ding, were you abducted by them?" "Let the past stay past. Is my egg-fried rice not good?" Ding Songyan had no inclination to go searching for the acquaintances of the body's original owner. He had a somewhat cold nature at heart. The sociable, warm-hearted manner was something life had beaten into him over time. "It's good." Su Chang'an buried his face in the rice. After a while, he looked up at Ding Songyan. "So will you go to Dangkang Temple to tell stories today?" Ding Songyan smiled and said, "I won't. I've entered the Bright Night sect." Su Chang'an froze where he sat. When?" "Yesterday afternoon. Sect Master Tao of the Bright Night sect saw that my gifts were exceptional and my mind quick, and took me on as a personal disciple." Ding Songyan deployed an absurd boast to paper over the truth. You've become the sect master's direct disciple." Su Chang'an's eyes went wide. He was finding that every time he saw Brother Ding, the man gave him a fresh fright. He bore no resemblance to the one he remembered. "Would I lie to you?" Ding Songyan asked back with a grin. Su Chang'an looked at him with an expression that said, "Yes, you absolutely would." After a few beats of silence, Su Chang'an said, embarrassed but brimming with hope, "Brother Ding, when the year-end comes, could you put in a word for me to let me enter the Bright Night sect as well? Just an outer disciple would be enough. Weren't you set on becoming a great thief? The Bright Night sect's techniques probably aren't suited for that." Ding Songyan could not picture Zheng Zhuxi, his upright and proper senior sister, taking up thieving. "Ha!" Su Chang'an rushed his words out. Ambitions are allowed to change. There was still some goodwill between Ding Songyan and Su Chang'an. He thought it over and said, "I'll try when the time comes. If all else fails, I'll take you as my guinea pig, no, as my founding senior disciple, to study the divine techniques I create. You'll call me master, I'll call you brother, and we'll each answer to our own." Su Chang'an was about to thank him when Ding Songyan's attention shifted to the courtyard doorway. Within 2 or 3 breaths, Tao Wenshu appeared there, wearing her iron crown and black robes, with Zhang Zhuxi beside her in a deep crimson dress. "Greetings, master." Ding Songyan rose and bowed. Su Chang'an scrambled hastily from his seat and did his nervous best to imitate Brother Ding. "No need for ceremony." Tao Wenshu stepped into the courtyard and was taken aback when she saw Ding Songyan. Ding Songyan turned to Zhang Zhuxi. "Good morning, senior sister Zhang." Zhang Zhuxi smiled. "When I saw you that night, I truly never imagined you would become my own junior brother. All thanks to Master's regard for me." With her mother, who was also his own master present, Ding Songyan was careful not to speak carelessly. Tao Wenshu gave a slight nod and produced 2 items. "This is the deed to a courtyard the Zhen family held on Bayoping Lane, and this is a secret manual that the Zhen family recovered from thief leader Zhang Rui. It contains aperture forging methods. Consider these as welcoming gifts from me. The rest can wait until we return to the sect." Thief leader Zhang Rui. Is that not Su Chang'an's master? Did master know about my relationship with Su Chang'an and specifically request this manual? Ding Songyan saw no reason to stand on ceremony. He thanked Tao Wenshu and accepted both prizes. Giving them a quick look, he found that the property deed described a full 3-courtyard compound, and the manual was titled The 10 Bodies, 100 Hands, Blameless Profound Art. Sounds pretty impressive. Ding Songyan leafed through the manual with keen interest. He noted that the Great Proliferation Realm section was divided into 3 chapters, the first on aperture forging, the second on meridian condensation, and the third on viscera installation. Pretty much what I expected. After creating heterogeneous apertures, one must condense the chi meridians to connect them. For apertures that have no physical anchor, non-human organs derived from divine creatures and strange beasts must be transplanted in. That step is apparently called viscera installation, the same term used in the crafting of idols, though with a different meaning. Actually, come to think of it, the 2 share an underlying principle. Is cultivating the martial path not the act of sculpting one's own divine form, of sculpting a god for the living world? Drawing on his own condition, Ding Songyan now had a firm grasp of what the Great Proliferation Realm entailed. Turning to the end, he found that the 10 Bodies, 100 Hands, Blameless Profound Art had no Dharma Realm section, only the heading Stealing Heaven's Secrets and a few sparse lines of text. Immediately disinterested, he tossed the manual to Su Chang'an. "Your master's legacy. It suits you rather well." The palm techniques, movement arts, methods for stealing fortune and heaven's secrets, and the descriptions of gaining extra lives, all of it was perfectly suited to a great thief. Brother Ding. This." Su Chang'an caught the manual but could not string a complete sentence together. When sect master Tao mentioned thief leader Zhang Rui, he had already known this manual was the wondrous art his master had spoken of, one that could encompass all he had already learned. To say he felt no longing for it would have been a lie, but he had never once imagined that Brother Ding would simply give something so precious to him. Ding Songyan glanced at him. "If I'm giving it to you, take it. It belonged to your master to begin with. What you need to think about now is whether to cultivate this art or wait for a chance to join a major sect. Once you begin aperture refinement, there's no going back." For Ding Songyan, possessing the chaos traits and having reached the Grandmaster realm, he had little regard for a manual that lacked even a Dharma realm section. If he ever truly wanted to derive techniques from it later, would Su Chang'an really dare refuse him a look once he had fully mastered his own power? Of course, part of his easy generosity came from how effortlessly the manual had fallen into his hands. It felt entirely unreal and intangible. It wasn't even worth as much as the 40-odd taels of silver he had painstakingly scraped together. He found himself in the mood of thinking, "Gold squandered will return again." Witnessing Ding Songyan's loyalty and generosity, Tao Wenshu gave an almost imperceptible nod. Zhang Zhuxi's regard for him deepened as well. Hearing Brother Ding's words, Su Chang'an's attention shifted from whether to accept the gift to whether to cultivate the art. On one side lay a martial art within reach and perfectly suited to him, on the other, a hope of joining a major sect, one that was possible but uncertain. A few breaths was all it took for him to decide. Overcome with gratitude, he said to Ding Songyan, "A master for a day is a father for life. I want to cultivate this art, but Brother Ding, I have no way to repay you right now." This was no longer a matter of money. Consider it a debt noted, Ding Songyin replied offhandedly. At this moment, Tao Wenshu said, Songyin, will you stay in the prefecture city a few more days to settle your affairs and return with your senior sister, or will you pack today and come back to Alpine Lake Mountain with me? Ding Songyin clasped his hands without a moment's hesitation. Master, I would gladly return to the sect with you. Catching the looks from both Tao Wenshu and Zheng Zhuxi, he grinned. I can't wait to start training, Master. An admirable spirit. Tao Wenshu smiled and nodded. But you must remember, in martial cultivation, haste makes waste. A weak foundation makes progression difficult in the future. Zhen Qianfen and the many grandmasters forcefully initiated by their sects stand as cautionary examples. Ding Songyin acknowledged her and returned to his room, pulling out a pack to sling on his back. He placed clothing, books, and silver inside, including his copy of the secret classic of mountains and seas. He had already searched the room the previous day and found that the personal belongings of the demoness Jai, his nominal mother, Qiu Chen, and Li Jai were all gone. Whether destroyed or moved in advance, he couldn't say. It served as a reminder that this world's martial path held wonders he had barely imagined. Secret arts capable of tracking a person across thousands of miles by scent alone almost certainly existed, and there were sorcery and curse techniques. Personal belongings used over a long period must never be carelessly discarded. Done packing and carrying a wooden frame on his back, Ding Songyin returned to the main room and pressed the deed for the Bayoping Lane courtyard into Su Chang'an's hands. Help me take possession of the courtyard, arrange for the servants to clean it regularly, and pay their monthly wages. I'll need a place to stay when I come back to the prefecture city. If you're short on money, dismiss the servants and do the cleaning yourself. The Bright Night sect assisted with patrol duties in the prefecture city and several county seats, and Ding Songyin was certain to return often. Having his own place to stay would be far more comfortable than lodging in the Yamen guest room. Of course, brother Ding. Su Chang'an had been worrying over how to repay him. Ding Songyin pointed to the square table. You can write, yes. Remember to copy out The Legend of the White Snake for me and sell it to the book guild. Keep the original at home. I'll come back for it. As for the pots and pans, wash what's worth keeping, sell the rest, and if they don't sell, move them to the new courtyard. After that, let the landlord know the lease won't be renewed when it expires. Ah, Su Chang'an looked a little lost. Ding Songyin laughed. Did you think the 10 bodies, 100 hands, blameless profound art came for free? You should know its worth at least. Lacking any point of reference, Ding Songyin could not come up with a suitable figure. At least 10,000 taels of silver, Zheng Zhuxi helpfully answered. 10,000 taels. Ding Songyin went blank. He had worked so hard for so long and only scraped together 42 taels and 8 kyan of silver, plus 612 copper coins. Most of the windfall came from Su Chang'an, and of what remained, roughly 9/10 had come as tips from young Miss Zio Ching. And from the idle chatter he had overheard at the lane entrance, he knew that the 3-courtyard compound on Bayoping Lane was worth 150 taels at most. Zheng Zhuxi explained earnestly. That manual contains aperture forging methods. Cultivated to a sufficient level, it's enough to found a sect anywhere outside the prefectural cities. At the perfected Great Proliferation Realm alone it grants the cultivator 9 lives. Even without the Dharma Realm section or how it falls short of 10 lives, it's more than enough. Countless people covet it. 10,000 taels is actually an underestimate. Manuals of this caliber are priceless, there's no market for them. Stop, my heart aches. Senior sister, you are an upright and principled swordswoman. Why must you be so expert at twisting the knife? You didn't even mean to. Ding Songyin worked hard to keep his smile looking natural. No, brother Ding, I'm happy to help with these errands, Su Chang'an hurried to explain. I was just surprised. You're not coming back to Chengyu Lane anymore. He had no idea whether he would ever see 10,000 taels in his lifetime. Ding Songyin chuckled. What would be the point? It couldn't be the case of 10 days of playing house, a lifetime of feelings for the Ding family, right? All right. Is there anything else you need me to do? Su Chang'an asked. Nothing for now. Ding Songyin shouldered his pack and walked toward the courtyard. We'll see when I'm back in the city. Before aperture refinement begins, you're allowed home for 3 days each season. After it begins, those 3 days still apply, but you'll also spend half a month each season assisting with patrol duties, though not necessarily in the prefecture city. Zheng Zhuxi briefed her junior brother on the basics while tucking a small blue cloth bundle into his pack. What's this? Ding Songyin asked, curious. Zheng Zhuxi smiled. Secret manuals collected from the Zhen Manor, the Water Ape Divine Art, the Northern Sea Fish Spine Scripture, the 3 secret chapters of the Wind Earl. None have aperture forging sections, so they'll go into the scripture repository for fellow disciples to consult and familiarize themselves with the techniques and forms of other sects. The Yamen didn't take them. Only now did Ding Songyin realize the resources of major sects might be even greater than he had imagined. They made copies of everything, and they took the aperture forging sections from the Water Ape Divine Art and the Northern Sea Fish Spine Scripture as well. Zheng Zhuxi stepped back with the faint delight of being a senior sister for the first time. Junior brother Ding, once I finish my patrol duties, I'll return to the mountain and guide your training. Her mother was occupied with sect affairs and had taken on only a few disciples. After Zheng Zhuxi herself began aperture refinement and received her sect ranking, her mother had taken none at all. Now, at last, she had finally gotten one of her own to teach. Thank you, senior sister Zheng. Ding Songyin was quite happy to cultivate a good relationship with his master's own daughter. After bidding farewell to Su Chang'an, Zheng Zhuxi accompanied her mother and junior brother all the way to the western city gate. Bright Knight sect disciples on watch there brought out 2 proud, somewhat unruly horses. Do you ride? Tao Wenshu looked at her new disciple. If not, I'll have a senior brother share a horse with you. Ding Songyin had visited an equestrian club during social engagements in his past life, but he had only managed to ride with an instructor guiding him the whole time. Unwilling to boast, he approached the horse while citing his soul departure sickness as an excuse. I'm not sure, master. He had not yet actually touched the tawny horse when it gave a sudden shudder, its wild, unruly gaze instantly becoming clear and placid. He reached out and found the horse remarkably docile. He tried mounting, took hold of the reins, and walked it in a circle nearby. Seeing how well the tawny horse cooperated, Ding Songyin let out a breath and smiled at his master. It seems I can ride after all, master. Tao Wenshu gave a gentle nod, swung onto her black horse, and led Ding Songyin westward at a measured pace. An hour later they turned south. Reaching a river, both of them slowed their horses to cross the bridge. Ding Songyin glanced left and right, saw no one nearby, and pulled his reins to bring himself alongside Tao Wenshu. He spoke in a low voice. Master, I have something else to report. What is it? Tao Wenshu turned to look at him. Ding Songyin deliberated his choice of words. Yesterday, I did in fact obtain a piece of chaos remains. Using my ability to commune with the netherworld, I hid it there, which is how it escaped Demon Esjai's notice. After returning home yesterday, I consumed it. He was following his own earlier logic. Before a master who would regularly instruct him in the martial arts, his cultivation level and unusual nature could not possibly be concealed forever. It was better to confess at once. And if his master accepted it, with the sect master's help in keeping it quiet, the other disciples would be hard-pressed to find out. And if his master did not accept it, this remote stretch of wilderness was perfectly suited for making a swift escape. Having laid bare the matter of the chaos remains, Ding Songyin watched his master's expression with extreme care, ready at any moment to disrupt the 6 directions, affect the 4 seasons, and flee to the ends of the earth. The usually composed Tao Wenshu showed a rare flicker of emotion across her face as she looked at Ding Songyin, as though a candle flame had lit in her eyes, and said nothing for a long while. Skilled at reading people, Ding Songyin saw frustration and loss in her face, which eventually settled into relief and gratitude. Once the horses descended from the stone bridge, the iron-crowned Tao Wenshu let out a long breath. You were right to conceal it yesterday. Otherwise, I cannot be certain I would not have given in to greed and done something shameful. Had that happened, years of cultivation would have been ruined in an instant, and half a lifetime of good name washed away. She went on to explain, my predicament resembles Zhen Qianfan's. If I could consume the chaos remains, every problem would resolve itself at once. How could I not be tempted? How could I not feel any greed? Back at Chengyu Lane, I thought you had eaten something else. Your foundation is unstable as well, master. Seeing Tao Wenshu speak so frankly, Ding Songyin set down his guard and turned his concern to her. Tao Wenshu held the reins with one hand and smoothed a stray lock at her temple with the other. She gazed at the stretching green fields along the road and the fortified villages and hamlets in the distance, and sighed. It is a long story, and it begins with the dynasty's southern migration more than 200 years ago. Our Bright Knight sect's arts are special, and we have long been a thorn in the side of heretic factions. When the calamity struck, our losses were worse than any other sect's. By the time we reached Ning province, only 2 grandmasters and a few dozen disciples remained. Even the cultivation teaching elders had died. A handful of disciples who had learned from them survived, but none had completed their training. Of the 3 fundamental scriptures, the Bright Knight Grand Method was lost entirely. The Celestial Stars Scripture and the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra both had gaps in their aperture forging and viscera installation sections. Without completing them, once the 2 remaining grandmasters died, the Bright Knight sect would have gradually declined, sink into obscurity, and eventually be reduced to a footnote in a history book. Our forebears were grief-stricken and discouraged, but none gave up. One disciple who had only recently joined later became the 3rd sect master after the sect was re-established in Ning province, Patriarch Pei Yuan. He had a sudden inspiration one day. He reasoned that in the secret classic of mountains and seas, the goddesses Bright Knight and Candleflame are described together as one. And every past patriarch had said that the 3 fundamental scriptures ultimately converge into a single whole despite taking different paths. Was it not possible, then, to use the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra to complete the Celestial Stars Scripture, and the Celestial Stars Scripture to complete the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra? That's right, in the secret classic, Bright Knight and Candleflame share a single description. Starlight, Candleflame, illuminates the long night, penetrates the deepest dark. Ding Songyan listened to the sect's history with great interest. Tao Wenshu glanced at the few late-ripening yellow plums visible in the forest ahead, and her expression grew solemn without her noticing. It was extremely dangerous. But for the survival of the sect, many great proliferation realm disciples stepped forward of their own accord to make the attempt. Some suffered deviations and ended up bedridden. Some suffered recurring hallucinations and hanged themselves years later. Some made no further progress at all. Some even regressed in their martial arts. But all of them reported their experiences faithfully to the 2 grandmasters, who compared what they heard against their own memories of aperture forging and revised the relevant techniques accordingly. By the time both scriptures were provisionally fixed and ready for cultivation, only a handful of the original disciples who had not yet begun aperture forging were left unscathed. Patriarch Pei Yuan lived up to everyone's hopes. More than 10 years later, he reached the Dharma realm by cultivating the restored Celestial Stars Scripture, though he remained forever confined to lesser mastery. Based on his own experience, he made further refinements to both arts. And so the Bright Knight sect has passed the flame down, generation after generation, using the lessons of those before as fuel, using that fuel to light the road for those who follow. We now have the Celestial Stars Scripture and the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra as they stand today. The Dharma realm remains difficult to reach, but a genuine path forward has been carved out. Yet a hidden flaw remains. My Dharma realm has long been at greater mastery, but no matter what I try, I cannot sense the void's vital energy corresponding to the last 3 exterior apertures. The perfected Dharma realm is beyond me, to say nothing of the Heaven Man realm. It is like building a tower whose every level leans slightly. Past a certain floor, the accumulated slant becomes irreversible, and no further height is possible. Seen in that light, if we wait generations upon generations, each one correcting earlier parts of the scriptures, perhaps the road to the Heaven Man realm could eventually be paved. But if I consumed those chaos remains, I could achieve the perfected Dharma realm at once. While encompassing all I have already learned, I would have genuine hope of reaching the Heaven Man realm through the chaos path. If I truly became a supreme master, with the power to manifest the way and its virtue, paired with everything I have learned over the years, I could genuinely derive and complete the Celestial Stars Scripture and the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra, freeing future disciples from being trapped at the Dharma realm and restoring the Bright Knight sect to the ranks of the top sects. Songyan, if you had not concealed it yesterday, I truly might not have withstood the temptation. This was no longer merely Tao Wenshu's own longing. It was the obsession of generation after generation of Bright Knight sect forebears, an obsession accumulated across nearly 260 years. Before Ding Songyan could respond, Tao Wenshu gave a soft laugh. From now on, that burden falls to you. The Bright Knight sect master wore a look of ease, as though she had broken through some inner barrier in the telling of it. I am willing to do so, master, Ding Songyan said solemnly. It was not only because of the conduct of Tao Wenshu and Zhang Zhaxi, and what had just been told to him that had given him a sense of belonging to the Bright Knight sect. It was also because he had long wanted to find out just how far manifesting the way and its virtue could take him. He held the reins and, following the thread of conversation, asked, Master, I heard Yan Chanking say that 7 or 8 in 10 who become grandmasters by consuming divine objects end up trapped at the Dharma realm and cannot achieve the Heaven Man realm. Is that so? Yan Yang did not deceive you in that. Tao Wenshu considered it a moment and smiled faintly. But you are not truly a grandmaster in that sense, are you? In 3 years at the least, 5 at most, my realm and strength will recede. Ding Songyan did not hide it. Tao Wenshu looked out again over the green fields and nodded. 3 years should be enough. Unlike those who became grandmasters in a single leap, you must not only probe the changes in your body and create the corresponding techniques, you must also walk the entire cultivation path in reasonably complete fashion. That is your weakness, but it is also where you surpass them. As long as each step is taken with solid footing, and each step is a tempering of mind and self, when you truly reach the perfected Dharma realm, stepping into the Heaven Man realm will be no harder for you than for a grandmaster from a major sect who cultivated there by normal means. During these 3 years, ensure you guard against arrogance and impatience. I was already thinking of cultivating diligently these 3 years. Ding Songyan relieved some of her worries. He turned to another matter. Master, traits like establishing the 6 directions and dividing the 4 seasons require me to act deliberately in order to portray them. But banishing demons and warding off evil seems to be ever present. How should I rein it in? Many traits are permanently active, taking effect at all times. To rein them in, you must reach the Heaven Man realm and achieve complete mastery over yourself. Tao Wenshu's explanation was brief. So I need to become a supreme master. Until then, I can only exchange letters with Miss Zio Ching. Ding Songyan slowly exhaled. Tao Wenshu smiled then. I was just about to ask whether you would take the Celestial Stars scripture or the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra as your primary scripture. Though both ultimately lead to the same place, below the Dharma realm one cannot cultivate them equally. One must be primary and the other supplementary. I myself only reached Dharma realm lesser mastery before my candlelight sword intent was able to match my primary scripture without falling short. Since you consumed the chaos remains and can encompass all methods, there is no need to distinguish primary from supplementary. Simply cultivate both. Your senior sister, Zheng, majors in the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra, and senior brother Su takes the Celestial Stars scripture as his primary text. The other senior brothers and sisters each have their own strengths. If I am away from the sect, you may seek guidance from any of them. Hearing this, Ding Songyan recalled something else and spoke up quickly. Master, I would like to conceal my current realm for the time being, keeping it from fellow disciples until I truly reach the Dharma realm or the perfected Dharma realm before making it public. First, if it were exposed, the imperial court and other sects might suspect that what I previously said was not entirely truthful and draw unwanted conclusions. Second, I have no martial arts yet matching my realm. If challenged by a young grandmaster, I'll be severely disadvantaged, making steady step-by-step cultivation difficult. Tao Wenshu paused, the corners of her eyes softening. This was precisely my intention. Though she was past 40, as a first-rank grandmaster with a lifespan of over 120 years to a maximum of 150 years, her face bore not a wrinkle, and she looked no older than a woman in her early 30s. Tao Wenshu said seriously, as I mentioned just now, the Bright Knight sect's arts are special, and we are a persistent thorn in the side of many heretic factions. If they learned that a disciple of ours had a genuine prospect of reaching the Heaven Man realm and completing the Celestial Stars scripture and the Candlelit Nocturne Sutra, they would move to eliminate you without delay. Expect major figures of the heretic path to come looking for trouble. While you remain within the sect, you will be safe enough, but the later stages of tempering mind and self will require you to travel the Jianghu. If the truth has already spread by then, the danger will be excessive. I will inform the other 4 grandmasters within the sect. Otherwise, they might allocate resources by rank and shortchange you. I will help you conceal it for as long as possible. Ding Songyan breathed easier at that and followed his master in quickening their pace, heading toward Alpine Lake Mountain, more than 100 miles southwest of Dingjiang Prefecture City. To the rhythm of hoofbeats, Tao Wenshu continued to think, sometimes mentioning how she would use the submission of the secret classic of mountains and seas as a pretext to grant her disciple grandmaster-level treatment, and sometimes introducing him to various matters of the sect. Ding Songyan took the opportunity to observe the landscape outside the city. The roads were flat and the fields plentiful, but every village and town had fortified itself into a walled enclave. Manors and earthen towers appeared one after another. They were small but complete in every function. Few people lived in isolated dwellings outside these communities. This was the other face of a flourishing martial world, banditry that could never be fully stamped out, and heretic practitioners everywhere. A little over 2 hours later, as they alternated between galloping and resting the horses, the two of them arrived at Alpine Lake Mountain. At the foot of the mountain on the left stood a sizable town, its walls built high. Life on the mountain is austere. Many disciples find it hard to remain there long-term once they've started families, but they cannot stray too far from the sect either. So they settle in the villages at the foot of the mountain and come up only when needed. That is how Alpine Lake Town gradually took shape. Tao Wenshu gave a brief introduction. There are community theaters, martial arts halls, acrobatic troupes, taverns, and all manner of shops. Ding Songyan glanced at the bustling town gate, then followed his master in handing their horses to several disciples at the mountain entrance, and they began climbing the rough and difficult road upward. Along the way, they passed Bright Night sect sentries at intervals, and the dense mountain forest seemed to conceal hidden lookouts as well. Ding Songyan observed as he walked, drawing on his grandmaster realm to keep pace with his master without falling a single step behind. After one incense stick's worth of time, the view before him suddenly opened wide. There at the mountain's waist lay a flat lake, its waters crystalline and clear. Tall and short buildings, pavilions and courtyards surrounded it on all sides. The lake itself mirrored the deep green of the mountains and the brilliant blue of the sky. It was dreamlike, otherworldly, and breathtakingly beautiful. The worst days of summer had passed, and the mountain air had turned noticeably cool. Though Ding Songyan was no longer affected by heat or cold, and could disturb the seasons in his immediate vicinity, he still changed into a thicker black training uniform like everyone else. His left sleeve was dotted with starlight, and his right sleeve painted with clusters of candle flame. He stood in the Dipper Mansion training ground that belonged to Tao Wenshu's lineage, moving through his forms at an unhurried pace. His fist stances were rounded, alternating between light and heavy, flowing sometimes like a babbling brook, sometimes crashing like ocean waves. This was the initial realm cultivation method he had created through a month of trial and error, drawing on the changes to his own body and the Bright Night sect's 2 body tempering and chi cultivation arts, the 28 Mansions art, and the body candle mind fire art. Of course, he had also studied the various corresponding arts the Bright Night sect had collected. Unlike the arts of other sects, which invariably emphasized one part over another, Ding Songyan's initial realm art treated every part of the body equally, neglecting nothing. Both body and mind were gathered inward, perfectly rounded and responsive. It was divided into 9 forms, each with its own distinctions of stillness and motion, some slow and some fast. They happened to have 36 diagrams with detailed annotations. Ding Songyan named it the 9 primal arts, thoroughly gratifying his own vanity. In recent days, he had sealed off the chi meridians he had condensed from his consumption, read through every chi circulation art in the scripture repository, and through constant experimentation and refinement, finally found the initial realm chi cultivation route most suited to himself, naming it the forward-reverse circulation. His plan going forward was to formally enter the human realm, begin aperture refinement, and grope his way toward creating the corresponding visualization chart. "Junior Brother Ding, what are you doing?" A clear but languid male voice drifted from the entrance of the Dipper Mansion training ground. Ding Songyan finished the final form of the 9 primal arts, cradling the Taiji, spread his arms in a long stretch, and turned with a smile. "Practicing a family art. Since it's my own body tempering art, why can't I call it a family tradition? I'll make my children practice it one day. The only real problem now was that his body had already changed. Even using the secret method Yan Changqing had taught him to deceive himself and others, that fact could not be erased. This made it difficult to gauge whether the 9 primal arts and the forward-reverse circulation would be considered challenging for someone just beginning the martial path, whether they were a surmountable difficulty, or one that simply couldn't be practiced at all. He would have to find willing volunteers to test it later. Stepping into the Dipper Mansion training ground was a young man around 26. His black training uniform hung loosely on him, his hair tied up in a simple knot. His brows were sharp and his eyes bright, but his nose lacked height and his lips were somewhat thick. They robbed him of the full measure of dashing and cool-edged handsomeness. "That family tradition of yours actually looks rather good." The newcomer smiled, unhurried and at ease. He was Ding Songyan's own senior brother, second in rank among the disciples still under Tao Wenchu's personal instruction. His surname was Wan, given name Gyuhong. He had only returned from wandering the Jianghu the previous year, rated mortal surpassed in the Orchid rankings, the 4th rank in common parlance. According to Tao Wenchu, Wan Gyuhong lacked only a final round of viscera installation and the corresponding 3 apertures and meridians to achieve the perfected Great Proliferation realm. It couldn't be considered the pinnacle by the standards of major sects, but it was outstanding within the Bright Knight sect. Hearing Wan Gyuhong say this, Ding Songyan's face lit up at once. He asked eagerly, "Senior Brother Wan, would you like to try it?" Even if Senior Brother Wan was a Great Proliferation realm master, his body surely couldn't match a grandmaster's. Having him try the 9 primal arts would still yield useful data for later improvements. Wan Gyuhong gave an inexplicable shudder and raised an eyebrow. "You know my temperament. If I can sit, I won't stand. If I can lie down, I won't sit. Even if your family tradition were among the most divine arts in the world, I wouldn't spare it a second glance." He yawned, covering his mouth with his hand. "We have clear autumn skies and crisp air, the perfect time for a good sleep. Why waste it on martial training?" Tusk. No wonder Master is so resentful towards you for failing to meet expectations. You treat daily training like clocking in for work, never voluntarily doing more than required. Ding Songyan grumbled inwardly, a little disappointed. This was also why Tao Wenchu had assigned Wan Gyuhong to instruct in her stead when she was occupied. This disciple was lazy and easygoing. Even if he noticed something off about Ding Songyan, he wouldn't dwell on it. He was unlikely to uncover his secret. Compared to eldest senior brother Su Julong, who was upright but meticulous, Wan Gyuhong was clearly better suited to guide Ding Songyan through the celestial stars scripture. Zheng Zhuxi was responsible for guiding him through the candlelit Nocturne Sutra. Both Tao Wenchu and Ding Songyan trusted her character completely. They knew that whatever she discovered, she would keep to herself. Wan Gyuhong picked up a still-sealed longsword from the weapon rack and twirled a sword flourish. "Junior brother Ding, you've already mastered the 28 Mansions art and the body candle mind fire art, and you completed your initial realm cultivation long ago. Today you may go to the scripture repository and borrow the celestial stars chart to begin aperture refinement. Before the Great Proliferation realm, this won't interfere with cultivating the candlelit Nocturne Sutra. Come, let me see how your introductory sword art is coming along." Ding Songyan drew a still-sealed sword as well and said while in thought, "Senior brother Wan, I have a question about the form called left support, right aid." The Bright Knight sect's introductory sword art was called Piercing Dawn, said to be a simplified derivation of the Flying Star Dawnbreak and other highly advanced sword forms from the Celestial Stars scripture. It comprised 36 forms in all. "What is it?" Wan Gyuhong thrust his sword suddenly, the tip quivering, first angling left, then with a flip of his wrist sweeping a half circle and slashing toward Ding Songyan's left. "This form is a feint. Its purpose is to fix the opponent in place and force them to face the follow-up, direct fall to the central palace." Ding Songyan watched with complete focus. In his eyes, Wan Gyuhong's sword move followed a certain logic, sketching out detail after detail, and every detail existed to summon what was to come. By the time the form reached its end, the intent of a sword cleaving the heavens was ready to burst forth, just as I thought. It's meant to lead into direct fall to the central palace. The original Flying Star Dawnbreak has been broken apart into several forms. Ding Songyan slowly imitated the movement. "Senior brother Wan, you said earlier that if the sword is fast enough and the force great enough, there's no need for a feint to overcome the enemy. It's only because the gap between opponents in real combat rarely reaches that level that all these forms came to exist. Given that, why must left support, right aid always be a feint? An enemy with sufficient knowledge of the piercing dawn sword art won't be fooled at all. Why not let feint and reality coexist, concealing truth within the false? That way it could, when necessary, convert into a killing move, leaving the enemy with no defense. Just as Yan Chanking had said, when the timing is right, false becomes real. When it isn't, real becomes false. Wan Gyuheng laughed. That variation does exist, it's just not in the introductory sword art. You'd need to complete your aperture refinement and develop myriad star true chi before you could hold chi in your wrist, and at the critical moment, switch the form from false to real. To do it through physical strength alone, you'd need to enter the great proliferation realm. No, said Ding Songyan, shaking his head. Eyes aligned with the shoulder is enough. He thrust his sword immediately, angling toward Wan Gyuheng's left. Just as he was about to flip his wrist, he suddenly pushed his shoulder forward, shoulder driving arm, arm driving wrist, and in an instant reversed the slash toward the right back into a thrust to the left, with greater force and greater speed. Ding Songyan then demonstrated how right aid could be converted into a real slash. He used no level of strength beyond body tempering and chi cultivation. Wan Gyuheng frowned slightly, watched it through once, then tried it himself. It actually works. He brought his sword to rest at his side and let out a surprised laugh. Over the next 2 hours, Ding Songyan went through all 36 forms of the Dawnbreak sword art, offering his own thoughts on each, improving some, cutting away the useless parts in others, and deliberating over some. In Wan Gyuheng's view, the introductory sword art was only meant for disciples who had not yet developed myriad star true chi or candle flame true chi. Such disciples never left the sect except to visit family and were never assigned to assist with patrol duties. The sword art they learned was for sparring within the sect, which was obviously not a matter of importance. No forebear had ever bothered to refine it. Junior brother Ding really had no need to waste time on this. Still, many of your ideas are quite interesting. I'll try some of them when I practice other sword arts later. Wan Gyuheng returned the still-sealed sword to the rack and watched Ding Songyan bid farewell and leave for the scripture repository. Suddenly, something felt off to him. He rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, was I mentoring his sword practice, or was he mentoring me? After a moment's thought, Wan Gyuheng shook his head. Let him do as he likes. A good afternoon nap is not to be wasted on the training ground. Second senior brother ambled out of the Dipper Mansion training ground and drifted along the rippling, pale blue alpine lake toward his own courtyard. Ding Songyan had already circled to the other side of the lake and was climbing the clean stone steps one by one toward the scripture repository above. It was a small building of blue-gray stone, only 3 stories above ground, with 7 disciples patrolling each floor. Ding Songyan came before Grand Elder Wang Zhou, who was on watch duty at the scripture repository that day, and smilingly presented the white jade token his master had given him. The token was carved with candle flame and starlight and held a thread of Tao Wenshu's sword intent within. With it, one could browse all the secret manuals and books in the repository. Grand Elder Wang Zhou was the eldest among the Bright Knight sect's 5 grandmasters and Ding Songyan's martial granduncle. Though past 50, his hair remained jet black and his face bore not a single wrinkle. No one would doubt it if told he was in his mid-30s. He had entered the Dharma realm a year later than Tao Wenshu and had only become a grandmaster at the age of 40. Finally beginning aperture refinement, are we? Wang Zhou took the token and gave it a cursory glance with his double pupils. It's time, Ding Songyan agreed, letting his gaze drift to the rows of iron shelves. They held the various cultivation methods the Bright Knight sect had collected which lacked aperture forging sections, as well as combat experiences recorded by disciples who had wandered the Jianghu, techniques of other practitioners, and the cultivation insights of past forebears. For the month and more Ding Songyan had been coming here, he had always been reluctant to leave, wishing the day had more than 24 hours. Wang Zhou placed great hopes in Ding Songyan as well. Setting aside talk of sect succession, the sheer possibility of Ding Songyan someday deriving and completing the Celestial Stars scripture was enough to make him eager. If the completed Celestial Stars scripture turned out not to conflict with what he had already learned, and could encompass it, then he could remedy his own foundation. The Heaven-Man realm might actually be within reach. And so, finding it a more pressing issue even than Ding Songyan himself, Wang Zhou and the other Dharma realm masters of the Bright Knight sect were anxious, but they could not show it, lest it affect his cultivation. All they could do was wait and watch, day after day, with quiet hope. After receiving Ding Songyan's affirmative reply, Wang Zhou wasted no time in leading him to the underground level. He retrieved the celestial stars chart, the aperture refinement visualization method, and pressed it into his hands with grave sincerity. Aside from not damaging it and not taking it out of here, you may do with it as you like. There are 49 cultivation chambers on this level. You may choose any one you like. The celestial stars chart was not a single image. Any grandmaster could in fact draw the corresponding visualization chart. Upon entering the Dharma realm, every martial practitioner could achieve the union of spirit, intent, and chi, and give them form through a brush, using intent to compose the image as well as embodying the corresponding method and the principle hidden within. This was the origin of the name Dharma realm. Visualization charts drawn by different grandmasters for the same technique would differ slightly in spirit and intent, each carrying its author's personal character. For example, the sword intent within Ding Songyan's white jade token held no injurious force, but carried Tao Wenshu's unique spirit and intent. That made it usable as a means of identification. Of course, minor differences in spirit and intent between charts did not affect the actual practice of aperture refinement. The method by which true chi circulated and was refined within the corresponding apertures was fixed. What different spirit intent could produce were primarily variations in the speed of refinement and the amount of energy consumed. The celestial stars chart Wang Zhou gave Ding Songyan was drawn by Tao Wenshu herself, and after generations of Bright Knight sect practitioners passing the flame down, Tao Wenshu was the one who had walked furthest along the martial path since the sect's re-establishment. Thanking the Grand Elder, Ding Songyan picked a meditation chamber in the corner at random, shut the heavy iron door, lit the oil lamp, and sat cross-legged on the meditation cushion. This dim and secluded environment was perfectly suited for visualizing the celestial stars chart and the candlelit nocturne chart. This was also why the Bright Knight sect had placed the visualization chambers underground. Ding Songyan unrolled the chart in his hands and beheld a vast and brilliant field of stars. Tao Wenshu had applied pine smoke ink to render the night sky, then dipped her brush in silver powder to dot in one star after another. The positions did not correspond to any actual constellation. It more closely resembled a miniature of the human body. The purple forbidden corresponded to the ancestral aperture, the supreme palace corresponded to the crimson palace, the heavenly market corresponded to the Danshan, and the remaining lunar mansions were arrayed at their respective points, 360 apertures in total. Merely looking at the chart, Ding Songyan felt a mysterious tremor pass through multiple apertures in his body. The celestial star's scripture requires refining 360 apertures of the human body. No wonder it takes 2 to 3 years. The 10 bodies, 100 hands, blameless profound art only needs 49 apertures, and most other arts in the scripture repository are under 100. My chaos constitution has more. Other than the ordinary human apertures, it includes extraperiphery and variable apertures, probably over 1,000 in all. Ding Songyan had not yet counted exactly how many apertures his chaos constitution encompassed. He closed his eyes and attempted to sketch out in his mind the most essential star in the celestial stars chart, the purple forbidden star. As that silver-bright star gradually took form, the dark true chi flowing through his ancestral aperture at the brow was stimulated. It trembled lightly and began to circulate through the aperture following some distinctive principle along an arcane path. In only a dozen or so breaths, the ancestral aperture at the brow was suffused with brilliant radiance. One aperture refined. Under normal circumstances, it would take a beginning practitioner 2 to 3 days, sometimes longer, to refine a single aperture. But Ding Songyan's apertures had already been refined by the chaos force and long since stabilized. What he was doing now was using manifesting the way and its virtue to encompass the refinement method of the celestial stars scripture. That naturally made it far faster, but this also presented a problem. Once Ding Songyan stopped visualizing the purple forbidden star, the brilliant radiance in his ancestral aperture would disperse on its own, reverting to darkness. For this kind of refinement to become an instinctive capacity of the aperture, one that appears the moment I will it, would take at least 2 days. That's roughly the same as a normal Bright Night sect disciple refining an aperture. With the entire celestial stars chart, that would probably take 2 to 3 years. Encompassing and deriving in this way holds no real meaning for me. I should be putting more effort into aperture forging, meridian condensation, viscera installation, and void aperture lodgement. It's not like I can pull out the visualization chart for a look before every battle engagement in order to activate the sect's true chi. And I just rely on the Bright Night sect's martial techniques. Ding Songyan sank into thought. In the past month or so, he had already clarified that the critical step of entering the Dharma realm was called void aperture lodgement. The Great Proliferation realm was divided into 3 parts: aperture forging, meridian condensation, and viscera installation, though the sequence of these 3 was not strict. Some heterogeneous apertures could only be forged after viscera installation, while others required immediate meridian condensation and chi circulation the moment they were forged to prevent them from gradually dispersing. Only then could other apertures be forged. As his thoughts drifted, Ding Songyan was suddenly reminded of something, made instinctive: training while walking, training while lying down. Both involve instinct, a common thread. Wait, could I use that secret method Yan Chanking taught me, the celestial heart art, to deceive myself? To make the body treat the aperture refinement method as an instinct, so that when I want to use it, it simply manifests naturally. That would consume some vital essence and lifespan, but certainly far less than training while walking, training while lying down. It's essentially forced memorization. If I can stabilize my Grandmaster peak realm in 3 to 5 years' time, I'll have over 120 years of lifespan to spare. It's a manageable cost. Right, I can't do this repeatedly, only for methods that are exceptionally useful. For now, limit it to the Celestial Stars Scripture and the Candle-Lit Nocturne Sutra. I'll cultivate everything else the normal way. Just yesterday, Ding Songyan had pulled from the shelves a book of Jianghu records left by the Bright Night sect's grandmasters 2 generations ago. It mentioned the sage-severing way and the self-deceiving, heaven-deceiving celestial heart art. Ding Songyan suspected the secret method Yan Chanking had taught him was the first half of the celestial heart art. He had not yet had a chance to read that book's other contents, intending to save them for evening reading. With his plan in place, Ding Songyan immediately set to work. His first step was not to deceive himself, but to use the hazy seed in his sea of consciousness to split his mind in 2, one half carefully examining the celestial stars chart, the other half diligently performing the visualization. In this way, Ding Songyan no longer needed to memorize and refine one aperture at a time. Within his sea of consciousness that was plunged in vast darkness, one brilliant star after another took rapid shape in accordance with the visualization chart he simultaneously viewed, assembling into constellations. In merely the time it took to drink 2 cups of tea, the dark expanse of his sea of consciousness transformed into a tranquil and dreamlike starry sky. Amid the glittering starlight, dark true chi flowed through, circulated through, and refined every aperture in Ding Songyan's body, gradually making them clear and luminous. When all 360 apertures were thus transformed, the dark true chi itself rapidly changed, converting in an instant into radiant starlight. Ding Songyan's eyes snapped open. Their dark, fathomless depths reflected a sky full of stars. He lightly pushed out a palm to one side, letting the brilliant and lucid myriad star true chi pour outward. The palm landed against the blue-gray stone wall of the meditation chamber in silence, sinking into it without a sound. Ding Songyan withdrew his right hand and saw a clear, complete, deep handprint pressed into the stone. I've mastered myriad star true chi in the time to drink 2 cups of tea. Ding Songyan's elation was immediately followed by a wave of exhaustion, as though he had gone a full day and night without sleep. He assessed his condition and found that the split consciousness memorization used to assist the aperture refinement had consumed mental energy, not vital essence or lifespan. What came next, the self-deception, would be what affected the latter too. taking advantage of the state in which every aperture in his body was aligned with the celestial stars chart. Ding Songyin gathered his two-halved minds back into one, then with complete focus began reciting the specific rhythm incantation within his sea of consciousness. To deceive others, first deceive yourself. The false can become true. Believe, and it exists. As his sea of consciousness shifted and transformed, Ding Songyin used the incantation and the art to continuously inform himself. The current state of his apertures was one of his body's original states, one that could be manifested without recollection or reattempt. And the trigger for manifesting this state was visualizing the purple forbidden star within the celestial stars chart. Recitation after recitation, the image of Ding Songyin within each thought gradually became suffused with starlight, internalizing it all as instinct. He did not know how long it took. When he finally finished, his head throbbed, his stomach turned with nausea, and his body felt so light he seemed to float, as though Ren Yaoyang had dragged him to drink at the pleasure house for 7 days straight. He composed himself, and after nearly an hour of sitting meditation did he recover. He could not tell precisely exactly how much vital essence and lifespan had been consumed. Based on his physical state, his initial estimate was 2 to 3 years. Next, Ding Songyin committed the purple forbidden star from the celestial stars chart to memory by normal means, to serve as the catalyst for manifesting myriad star true chi. With his Grandmaster realm to draw on, a quarter-hour of focused memorization and a quarter-hour of repeated attempts were enough to fix that star completely in his memory. It was now ready to appear at will. Ding Songyin snuffed the oil lamp, opened the iron door, and walked out of the meditation chamber rubbing his aching temples, yawning without any care for appearances. After returning the celestial stars chart to its place, he walked slowly back to the ground floor. How did it go? Grand Elder Wang Zhou looked at him with eager, expectant eyes. Ding Songyin smiled and said, "Done." "Done with what?" Wang Zhou's mind failed to catch up for a moment. Did he use manifesting the way and its virtue to refine one aperture from the celestial stars chart? That was under 2 hours. Other people needed 2 to 3 days. Ding Songyin gave a soft laugh. "I've mastered myriad star true chi." "What?" The Jianghu seasoned Wang Zhou was completely at a loss. Ding Songyin did not explain. Within his sea of consciousness, the purple forbidden star took swift shape, and the ancestral aperture at his brow trembled in response. He slapped a palm at Wang Zhou. Wang Zhou instinctively met it with his own. The moment their palms made contact, the Grand Elder leaped up from his chair and blurted out, "You've refined every aperture in the celestial stars chart." True chi this vast and sweeping, this star bright and luminous, could not have come from refining only a handful of apertures. That would still be thin and mixed through with the body's own ordinary chi, mainly through manifesting the way and its virtue, Ding Songyin replied with modest restraint. Under 2 hours. It took me 2.5 years. Wang Zhou's expression shifted through several registers as he let out a helpless sigh. So this is the chaos path. One of a kind in all the Jianghu know. There's also Demoness Jai. In this elder's experience, there were indeed martial arts that could derive the techniques of others. For instance, the yin-yang sect's boundless forms art. But to do it to the degree Ding Songyin had just demonstrated, Wang Zhou knew of no one besides Jai Hanyi, who shared the chaos constitution. Watching Wang Zhou's expression and hearing his words of wonder, Ding Songyin felt a surge of deep satisfaction. He had just done this deliberately to show off. If finery goes out only at night, it's no different from returning home rich and telling no one. If I don't show off in front of the people who know my secret, what is the point of cultivating at all? Leaving the scripture repository and descending the stone steps, Ding Songyin had barely rounded the mountain path's bend when Alpine Lake appeared before him in all its misty expanse. The sun tilted westward, scattering gold and red that nearly set the lake's surface alight. Flowing fire glittered everywhere, playing off the clear reflections of the green mountains and layered forest. It was a beauty that seemed too otherworldly to belong to the mortal world. A pleasantly cool breeze arrived just then, carrying the fresh scent of grass and trees into his nostrils. Ding Songyin felt his spirits lift at once, the fatigue and weakness accumulated earlier seeming to dissolve considerably. He walked down to the lakeside step by step, drew a deep breath, and strolled slowly along the bank, in no hurry to return to his quarters. On one side were small buildings nestled among flowers and trees, courtyards, training grounds, and pavilions. On the other side was the gleaming lake, the mountains, the setting sun, and birds in flight. Ding Songyan felt his chest uplift and broaden. The alpine lake was quite large. The buildings surrounding it were numerous enough to fill a sizable town. As far as Ding Songyan knew, counting the structures higher up the mountain, the Bright Knight sect could accommodate 5,000 to 6,000 people, far beyond the cliched image of a sect's size he had carried from his previous life. And this still did not qualify as a truly major sect. In ordinary times, only 800 or 900 Bright Knight sect members actually lived on the mountain. The rest were either in Alpine Lake Town at the foot of the mountain, coming up only when duty called, or stationed in prefecture and county cities where they assisted with patrols, or oversaw the mundane affairs of manors, ironworks, cloth shops, weapons stalls, and various trading enterprises, or served as protection for those commercial operations. Even so, new disciples in their second year had to shoulder loads of manure down the mountain at first light, delivering it to the sect's various manors. In their third year, they went down to Alpine Lake Town to carry rice, flour, meat, oil, and all manner of vegetables and fruit back up, serving the sect while completing their morning body-tempering exercises at the same time. Ding Songyan was grateful that, from the very moment he joined, his submission of the secret classic of mountains and seas had earned him a commendation, sparing him these arduous duties. As the breeze off the lake grew noticeably cooler, Ding Songyan was just turning to head back to his quarters when Zheng Zhuxi's perpetually lively voice reached his ears. "Junior brother Ding, do you find the evening light on Alpine Lake beautiful as well?" Ding Songyan turned to see Zheng Zhuxi approaching at a leisurely pace from 40 meters away. The young woman wore a lake green front-opening short jacket over a pale green pleated skirt. Tall and slender, she moved with the graceful sway of a willow branch touched by wind. Senior sister Zheng is open, warm, generous, and self-assured. Like the rosy dawn sky, she should wear red, crimson, or bright yellow. When needed to project uprightness and spirit, she could switch to the sect's black training gear. Yet somehow she has a fondness for fresh and delicate green. Ding Songyan muttered to himself, then stepped forward with a smile to meet her. Who could not love a view like this? It was not fake pleasantries. Ever since consuming the chaos remains and reaching the peak Grandmaster realm, Ding Songyan often found himself overcome by a wondrous sense that everything, the lake and mountains, the setting sun and evening glow, the birds returning to the forest, and the drifting clouds, was the way. He immersed both body and mind entirely, as though resonating with a deep and hidden rhythm of nature. At his current level of martial understanding, he could not yet extract much from these feelings, but he believed that in time, each moment of immersion and insight would find its way into the martial arts he was creating. As the distance closed between them, Zheng Zhuxi was stunned. "Junior brother Ding, what happened? Why is your face so pale?" Her double pupils were not yet prominent, and she had not noticed his condition until now. Ding Songyan smiled. "I just spent 2 hours on aperture refinement," Zheng Zhuxi exclaimed in understanding, then assumed her bearing as senior sister. "Rushing only damages the spirit. The earlier in one's training, the slower one must go." She genuinely could not understand why junior brother Ding, who a little over a month ago had shown no signs of any martial training, had completed the slow grinding work of body tempering and chi cultivation in just over a month of joining, and was already permitted to do visualization and aperture refinement. She had asked her mother, and the answer she received was that Ding Songyan had gained a certain benefit during the Zhen household affair. His body tempering and chi cultivation was adapting to a change already made to his body, not making the change itself. Zheng Zhuxi knew the Zhen household affair involved the mystery of Kunlun and the celestial Thirch's secret treasure, but she was unaware of the chaos remains. She could only guess that Ding Songyan had consumed something like a huai fruit, leaving him physically strong and brimming with vital essence. "Understood, senior sister Zheng." Ding Songyan gave a cooperative reply. Zheng Zhuxi's brows curved slightly, and she turned her clear smile toward her junior brother with genuine concern. "I have some calming incense that soothes the mind. I'll bring you some later. It will help nourish your spirit." Ding Songyan had no reason to decline his senior sister's kindness. Accepting help from others actually drew people closer than helping them did. It was just that many people struggled to bring themselves into accepting it like an inner hurdle, but it was one that Ding Songyan had cleared 7 or 8 years ago. After hearing her junior brother's gratitude, Zhang Juxi's dimples appeared, and a trace of sly cleverness came into her expression. "Junior brother Ding, could you do me a favor tomorrow?" "Ah, senior sister Zhang, you've changed. Back in Dingjiang Prefecture City, you would have asked for help as a matter of course. But today you first showed concern for me, gave me incense, and only then brought up the favor. A little stiff perhaps, but it genuinely does make the other person feel better. It seems what happened previously taught you something too." Even without deliberately studying her body language, Ding Songyan noticed the small change in Zhang Juxi. He asked with a smile, "What can I do for you, senior sister?" "Come with me to Alpine Lake Town for a stroll tomorrow afternoon," Zhang Juxi said smilingly and frankly. "That's simple." Ding Songyan had been about to say that Ahua from Chengyu Lane could handle this favor just as well, but he had not spent enough time with Zhang Juxi to know whether she could take that kind of teasing, so he kept his response straightforward. Zhang Juxi's dimples made a shallow appearance, her smile unchanged. "I'll explain when we get to Alpine Lake Town tomorrow. Really, all you need to do is keep me company while I wander around." So mysterious. Ding Songyan had been deeply absorbed in his martial research and creating martial arts himself recently and was reluctant to leave the mountain, but senior sister Zheng's request was hard to refuse. He gave a sound of agreement. "Then come find me at my courtyard tomorrow, senior sister." Satisfied, Zhang Juxi gave a reminder. "You've overtaxed your mind and spirit. Rest early. I'll leave the incense at your door shortly and won't come in to disturb you." With that, she waved farewell and walked off along the lake with a light step, the evening breeze rising around her. Ding Songyan circled to the northwest corner of the lake, near the cliff face, and entered his own courtyard. The courtyard had 5 rooms, 2 side chambers, 1 quiet room for meditation and reading, a main hall for dining and receiving guests, and a clean and tidy washroom equipped with a water basin and toilet. There was no cooking stove or firewood, only a warming brazier, a tea stove, and some coal. Clear mountain spring water flowed through clay pipes mounted on the walls and wooden frames, filling the water vat under the eaves and nourishing the flowers and plants around the courtyard, as well as the 2 trees on either side. One was an evergreen pine, the other a moisture-loving elm. Ding Songyan went to the washroom, relieved himself, then turned the bronze and iron mechanism to let the spring water flow out with a splash. He cupped cold water in both hands and splashed it on his face. The chill brought his spirits up considerably. He dried his face, hands, and body, closed the mechanism, changed into clean clothes, and returned to the main hall to find that a servant had already delivered the evening meal and his laundered and dried clothes. The food box contained red braised pork with an even mix of fat and lean. It was glistening and scrumptious. There was lotus leaf steamed chicken, mushrooms stir-fried with Sichuan peppers, a clear vegetable broth, and a large bowl of pearl-white rice. Ding Songyan swept through the meal like a gust of wind and felt his body and mind both ease. He tidied the food box, set it outside the door together with a cloth bag of clothes to be washed, and left them for a servant to collect. Zhang Juxi had already left a packet of incense, along with a small, elegantly simple celadon incense burner. Ding Songyan hung the "Do Not Disturb" wooden placard on the door, then carried the small burner and incense to the western side chamber, lit the oil lamp, and burned a stick of incense, setting it in the burner. A delicate but deep and settled fragrance gradually spread through the room, somewhat like cloves. Ding Songyan shed his outer robe, lay down on the bed, and by the glow of the oil lamp and the last light of day, began leafing through the book he had borrowed from the scripture repository the day before. This book, containing Jianghu records, noted that the sage Severing Way's 3 secret scriptures were the Sutra of Celestial Heart Wisdom, the Scripture of Sage Severing and Wisdom Abandonment, and the Heaven and Earth Correspondence chapters. Of these, the Sutra of Celestial Heart Wisdom was held in the highest regard. Every practitioner through the generations had been required to sever mortal bonds, and whenever no higher realm member of the sect existed, it was always a Sutra of Celestial Heart Wisdom practitioner who served as Sage Severing Way sect master. Breathing in the fresh, delicate fragrance and reading through various Jianghu matters, the already deeply exhausted Ding Songyan gradually lost the battle to stay awake as sleep came surging over him. The void around him suddenly produced that phantom wing which was white with snow, frozen with bitter cold. A piercing wind howled forth from it and snuffed the oil lamp in an instant. The phantom wing vanished as quickly as it had come. The room fell into darkness, and Ding Songyan sank into deep sleep. The following morning, Ding Songyan woke fully recovered and brimming with energy. After tidying up briefly, he opened the courtyard gate to find that the servant, seeing the "Do Not Disturb" placard, had not brought breakfast. He locked the gate and headed to the dining hall on his own. He had barely reached the lakeside when he spotted Wang Guheng ambling toward him with complete ease. This senior brother had a steamed bun clamped between his teeth and was balancing a spread of yellow oil paper in one hand. A stack of steamed buns was piled on top. "Good morning, senior brother Wan. Why not eat in the dining hall?" Ding Songyan greeted him with a smile. Of those who received meals delivered by servants, aside from the grandmasters and the higher-ranking stewards, only Ding Songyan and Zheng Zhuxi, who lived in her mother's courtyard, had that privilege. Wan Guheng smacked his lips. "If I sit down in the dining hall, someone's bound to come over. Senior brother Wan, how do I counter this move?" "Senior brother Wan, how should I circulate qi through this? Senior brother Wan, could you give me some pointers today? How is a man supposed to eat?" "Fair enough." Ding Songyan casually reached over and took 2 steamed buns from the oil paper in Wan Guheng's hand. Wan Guheng froze for a moment, then caught on. "Hey, those are my buns." Ding Songyan finished both meat buns in 3 bites and was about to continue walking when something tugged at his awareness, and he looked up toward the trees along the path. The Mid-Autumn Festival was approaching, and many of the leaves had already turned yellow. One of them slowly worked itself loose and drifted downward on the breeze. In that moment, Ding Songyan's eyes held only this tree, this leaf, this wind, and himself. This was a world entire. Ding Songyan gazed steadily and followed the drifting leaf one step at a time. The leaf came to rest precisely at a Bright Night sect boundary marker. Ding Songyan crouched down and studied its veins carefully, watching a column of ants march across it in perfect order. The 2 disciples standing guard at the boundary marker exchanged a glance and shook their heads with amused smiles. Sect Master Tao's newly accepted inner disciple was witty, generous, warm, and unpretentious. Everything about him was fine, except for his habit of drifting off into distant reverie and doing inexplicable things. Before they could say anything, a disciple stationed at the mountain's foot came hurrying up, leading someone along. The newcomer wore a dark, straight-cut robe and a wanderer's headband. He stood at 1.9 meters tall, and despite not being old in years, he bore a weathered and careworn face that seemed to exceed his age. The skin of both his hands had an unusual, almost translucent quality. He glanced over the Bright Night sect disciples guarding the marker, then let his gaze settle on Ding Songyan behind them, who was using a finger to poke at the ants' marching path, and furrowed his brow in puzzlement. "Please inform the sect master on my behalf. Pan Yunju of the Pan family of Eastern Plains Prefecture in Bao Province has urgent business with sect master Tao." The man withdrew his gaze and gave a bow to the 2 Bright Night sect disciples before him.